Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Everybody takes the win. That's my mindset, and that's where I'm at with it right now.
Here's the snap. Back to pass, looking left, pressure coming. Fires down the seam. Complete to Kincaid for a touchdown. Allen steps up in the pocket, going to take off and run. Has the first down and more. To the 40, to the 35, 30. Breaks away. 20, 10, 5. Touchdown, Josh Allen. Yeah, give him a flex, Josh. You just schooled them with their back turns.
3rd down and 7. Mayfield wide open. There's Moore again. His second catch. Still working through this secondary. And a touchdown, Tampa Bay. No flags.
But they've got to start having some answers on the offensive side of the ball.
2nd and 4. Here's another broken tackle. This is the rookie Trey Palmer, and he is gone. Touchdown, Buccaneers.
Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi, Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. Shane Schillerberg producing for us live at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on yet another chilly morning.
I'm tired of it, Ravi. I'm tired of it.
You know, the last few days here, I don't really like being trapped in my house that much. I like to go out to eat. I like to, kind of go places, whatever. There's some days where I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to bum out a little bit. But the last few days is the first time where I was like, you know what? I'm not sure I can retire here. I can sort of deal with this now. Imagining dealing with it when I'm 60 or 70 years old.
When your bones are brittle.
Yeah, like my bones are brittle enough already. Like I already am starting to get some of the like old man aches and pains. I just don't think I can do it when I'm, 30 years on from now. I don't, and I think that's the first time in my life I was like, I think I got to move at some point. I was like, I'm getting too old for this.
It feels like the movie Day After Tomorrow. And I'm just, every time I think about this, I first thought about it because Ravi saves Shane every single day. Shane currently does not have his vehicle. So Ravi's been taking Shane to work. And I'm like, Ravi, you're like Dennis Quaid and Shane's Jake Gyllenhaal. Like you're just there to go save your person and make sure that the family is reunited, which is known as Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's how it feels outside, though. I'm just waiting for the eye of the storm to come over our building so that I can see all of the frost just start to form on our walls. That's how cold it is. And I was tired of it day one. Imagine day 6 and how I'm still feeling.
Yeah, no, I don't feel great about it. I don't love it. It is supposed to warm up in a few days. And by warm up, I mean get to like a balmy 16.
I had to look up today how if a plane can travel in negative temperatures.
Luckily, we
found
safe.
out that it goes way far into the negatives.
Listen, if we get that cold, like I'm out. Like I am out.
We're doing the show remotely from spring training.
Yes, listen, maybe we should do that. Maybe we should have our own version of spring training for the radio program here, where we just go, you know what, as soon as football season ends, we go to wherever.
We go straight to Jupiter.
We go to wherever their bowl game's going to be, and then we go into spring training mode immediately, and then we come back when spring football starts. It'd only be a couple months. Mm-hmm. You think the boss man would foot that bill?
Yeah, I think that'd get approved.
We can see if we can get that expense
as long as he can come.
Maybe, yeah. We have just an entire remote office for the entire building. No, yeah, it's cold outside. In case you hadn't been aware, you've been,
maybe it's cold outside.
It's very cold outside. I'm not a fan. Not as sure it's as cold outside in Omaha as it might be in that locker room for Nick Sirianni. I think he's in trouble.
Cold shoulders.
I think he's in a lot of trouble.
Well, I can't sit here honestly today and rip on the Cowboys like I did yesterday and not rip on the Eagles.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, this is you turn the page and it's still the same chapter. It's not just the NFC East chapter. It's the, hey, who's going to get fired chapter. Mm-hmm. And Mike McCarthy may actually have a better chance of keeping his job than Nick Sirianni, because Mike McCarthy didn't blow a 10-1 start.
No.
He didn't lose the division because of that going down the stretch. What were they, 5 of their 6?
They lost 6 of their last 7, I think.
Yeah, 6 of their last 7.
Including last night.
Counting last night's game. Nick Sirianni, to me, tries to be Dan Campbell when he's not.
I'm glad you brought up Dan Campbell, because I said this on Twitter Sunday, where I wasn't buying the Dan Campbell thing when it happened because of the rah, bite the kneecaps kind of weirdo stuff that he was doing. Nick Sirianni is who I thought Dan Campbell was. Dan Campbell is genuine, and it connects with the players in a way that works, right? Nick Sirianni is the D-bag version of that. And that's what I thought when I saw Dan Campbell. But Nick Sirianni's a little bit better at playing the press conference without telling these people he's going to bite their kneecaps, but he's worse at it in the locker room.
Well, and Nick Sirianni last year was overshadowed because of the Eagles' performance and getting to the Super Bowl. The
Jalen Hurts thing.
His antics were just getting overlooked, right? And when you look at what happened this year, when they have as great of a start as they did, and he's in Kansas City, and of course these videos are resurfacing now, so they're fresh and people are really seeing them. But when he's like, "What's that?" I don't even know what he ended up saying, but he's just he's talking smack with the crowd. He's like, "Oh, it's quiet now."
Yeah,
or whatever.
There's a video of
and he's in the tunnel where no one can hear him, but he's just in front of a camera.
Yeah,
and he knows the camera is there.
There's a video of him standing next to Jalen Hurts in that game right before halftime, where he's kind of taunting the crowd and pointing at him a little bit, and Jalen Hurts actually grabs his arm and is like, "Hey, knock it off." He seems like one of those guys that you deal with when things are going well.
He said, "See ya." That's what it was.
Yes.
See ya.
See ya. He seems like one of those guys that you deal with when things are going well, because things are going well and you just are like, whatever, right? But when things start to go bad, and where did they start going bad for the Eagles? That
Week 12.
That 49ers game. That 49ers game.
And you know what? They could lose that game and still be okay because the 49ers were so good.
Yes. But A, the way they lost it, I think really shook them. And B, once things started to go, it was really that back-to-back. They get smacked by the 49ers 42-19. Then they get smacked by the Cowboys 33-13. And then they lose a 3-point game to the Seahawks. Now, I know they beat the Giants after that, but the Giants are terrible. That was a stretch where I think they really lost it in that stretch. Because, again, I've been around teams and coaches and whatever that maybe don't like each other that much, but if they're winning, they kind of deal with whatever is happening because
things are okay.
We're winning, it's fine. I'm not gonna
save this argument for another day.
Yeah, it's I'm not gonna overturn the apple cart because everybody's winning and that's all that really matters here. But if you've got a weird situation in the locker room like that, or you've got a coach that you don't totally respect, or you've got teammates that you don't totally respect, and all of a sudden you start losing, that thing falls apart in a hurry because you don't have each other to kind of hold the thing together. That's what it seems like the difference between Dan Campbell and Nick Sirianni is. Dan Campbell might have a lot of the same attributes, but he's genuine and a guy that people respect. Nick Sirianni is, again, the D-bag version of that.
And, you can't talk about the Eagles without talking about Jalen Hurts either.
Mm-hmm.
And,
that's the other question that they've got facing them.
That's something, too, where it's okay, yes, I know you made it to the Super Bowl last year. It was a close game last year. Things were kind of connecting on all cylinders last year. But the way that he played down the stretch of this season, let me tell you, as my fantasy quarterback, he did not give me the numbers I was looking for that I saw in the first 11 weeks. But also, he didn't look comfortable at all at any point in the back half of the season. Was that because of things that are happening behind the scenes, behind the curtain, in the locker room? Because, look, since week 12, that's the worst display of locker room presence, team chemistry, and coaching I don't think I've ever seen in sports a collapse like I saw the Eagles have this season after starting off the way that they did. Jalen Hurts, though, needs to be evaluated. Something there, a conversation needs to be had of, okay, I don't know if you sit him down on the white couch and say, bro, what happened?
Yeah.
Open up to me. Or if it's hey, we noticed this point in your game that's figured out, and I don't know if you've peaked or not. If you have peaked, if this is all we're going to get out of Jalen Hurts, is that enough for the Eagles to say, this is our franchise quarterback who's going to be our leader for years and years and years.
Yeah, I think a big difference is he's good enough to be your quarterback when the defense was what it was last year.
The defense was bad.
They lost a bunch of dudes.
And Matt Patricia was even worse.
Yes. So there was two things with the defense, right? They lost a bunch of dudes between last season and this season, including like Hargrove, who went to the 49ers, has been a big piece for them. They lost a couple safeties and they started aging a little bit too, right? Now they got some guys from Georgia like Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter kind of in that front seven to try and keep them young and try and replace some of those guys.
And they looked really good early on this season.
They did.
And then the defense just became bottom 25 to 32 this year?
Yeah, then that stretch, basically since the 49ers on, they just got crushed and they couldn't tackle.
Got to play football.
That wasn't a last night thing. That was and the first time I really noticed it, because I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I watched 17 Eagles games this year, right? A lot of it's like key matchups and then red zone, right? That's kind of how I consume teams that I don't have to deal with on a daily basis. But the 49ers game was the first time where I was like, man, these guys really struggle tackling. But I thought to myself, okay, it's Christian McCaffrey, it's Deebo Samuel, it's Kittle, it's Ayuk. It's these really good playmakers that everybody has trouble tackling, right? And so I'm like, maybe it's a bad day against a good team. And then you kind of watch them as the season goes out, and you're like, oh, these guys really can't tackle, like really, really bad. And then you saw it again last night where, listen, as much as I love Trey Palmer, like the guys
did not escape three guys.
The guys
at the 50.
The guys that were listen,
I'm running in a straight line.
Listen, I understand him running by guys, but it was the first guy that had him wrapped up for like a 3-yard gain, and then that's when he turned on the burners after that. Like, the guys that were escaping tackles for the Buccaneers last night are not special in terms of that part of their game, right? Trey Palmer obviously has special speed. He's special in other ways, but the breaking tackle, physical yards after catch part of their game, that's not really what the Buccaneers do in the same sense that the 49ers do it. And so that was pretty eye-opening to just say like, oh, that wasn't an aberration. That's who this Eagles defense is. And after seeing them last year, it was really kind of shocking to be like, oh, they have gotten so much worse. That really wasn't a one-off against the 49ers or the Cowboys back in early December. This was a abject failure from probably Nick Sirianni on down, from Sirianni to, you mentioned Matt Patricia, to them running back a bunch of old defensive backs out there that like guys like Darius Slay that just were getting roasted last night. They're in a lot of trouble because not only are they aging, not only do they have a lot of free agents, Jason Kelce's retiring. We just saw that this morning.
Oh, man, and I
officially
feel so bad for him.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for him because we've gotten to know Jason Kelce as a human, not as a football player, because of his podcast. And you see clips of it all the time, and we joked about it at the start of the show. He's one of us. You look at Jason and you think, this is somebody
that's just a dude
I could see on the sidewalk, pushing his kid in a stroller, and we could stop and talk for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But if you see Travis walking on the sidewalk, it's like, what do I have to relate with Travis Kelce about? Because he's dating a superstar. At some point in time, you have to like separate celebrity from average human being. And Travis leans more into that celebrity category than Jason does at this point.
For sure. And he's one of those, like, even before that, right? Like, he had a weird reality dating show centered around himself. Like, he's just always been a different dude, right? Like, he's always been a little bit more.
It's a loose cannon.
Inaccessible, I think. Like, he's much more different than just like a normal guy. Whereas Jason Kelce, if you didn't know he played football, you'd be like, oh, that guy's big. Like, he's, 6'3", 300 pounds almost.
That guy probably works at Home Depot.
Yeah, you look at him and be like, oh, that guy probably played football at some point. You didn't know who he was. You're like, that's a big guy. He probably played football.
Is that Ravi? No, it's Jason Kelce.
Not quite tan enough to be me. Some good beard though. But you know what I mean? Like, he looks like kind of just a normal dude, and he acts like a normal dude. And you do feel bad for him. I keep thinking about, you see him on the sidelines last night where he's obviously pretty emotional. He knew this was coming. I think he told his teammates either after the game yesterday or this morning. I don't remember what the tweet said about his plans to retire. But then I go back to watching him on the field after the Super Bowl last year, where he's like hugging his mom and he goes, "Hey, go talk to Trav. Like, this is his moment. Go talk to Trav." Like, that's where I went to in my head when I was like, "Ah, man,
he's one of your favorites now."
Yeah, and like but your like heart goes out for him. And like, I didn't want the Eagles to win last year because they beat the 49ers in the NFC Championship. I didn't really like, how that went down.
But it doesn't mean you can't like certain players,
right? But
and how they carry themselves as
yeah.
human beings.
So like in the moment, I was rooting for the Chiefs. But looking back at it now, I was like, man, kind of would have been nice if he got one more.
I just don't know if one more season on this team would do it for him.
No, I meant last year, like if he had gotten the Super Bowl, like if he gotten one more Super Bowl, because he's got the one in 2016 when they beat the they beat the Patriots.
That is correct.
And honestly, if they had won last year, I bet he retires after last year.
Maybe, yeah.
I think he came back to try and win one more because he thought they were. They
were built. They were built to win.
I mean, they were 10-1. Like,
you look at what happened this season, and it's a complete and utter failure from the top down.
Well, and you look at what the team was prior to that 49ers game. That was a team that was talked every bit as in that same conversation with the 49ers. And at that point was even talked about ahead of the 49ers because the 49ers had that weird 3-game losing streak in the middle or in the early part of the season. And so it's like, okay, yeah, it's the Eagles and then the 49ers. And then we saw what happened. You're like, oh, what is happening? Like, you're like, oh, that's a weird game. And then it happens again the next week against the Cowboys. And then you're like, oh, there might be something wrong here. And that's why it's like, I totally understand. Like, if you're Travis Kelce being in the offseason saying, yeah, let's run it back one more time. I think we can get it this year. Especially you look at Jalen Hurts, you're like, oh, he's only going to get better. He didn't get any better. He regressed a little bit. He went from 6 interceptions last year to 15 interceptions this year. The rushing yards came back down to earth a little bit.
And
the fumbles
it looked like he was uncomfortable in the pocket too, especially even last night. You can't take that safety.
No,
you can't.
No,
it's 3rd and 8, something like that, and you drop back, and you're going back 10, 12 yards at this point to get into the end zone.
Yep.
And what you couldn't just decide to throw the ball away whenever no one was open. That was another problem too. Like the receivers and even tight end Dallas Goedert. I know he showed his frustration on the sideline. Nobody was getting open for Jalen Hurts.
Right.
He didn't have an easy throw. Now, I will say, though, on that play, Devontae Smith was open, and Jalen Hurts just missed him.
He missed him. By the time he saw him, or by the time he would have seen him.
But I think it's because it's a little bit of that panic. Because of the pressure, and now he's thinking, I have to scramble because that's what he's good at. If he's feeling pressure, it's I got to use my legs now instead of I have to keep creating this play.
And that's
why we talk about a minor regression for Jalen Hurts. It's not that he's a bad quarterback.
No,
it's just that he regressed from last year, and you have to wonder if he can get back to what he once was, feeling comfortable and feeling like one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL.
Well, and you have to ask yourself, okay, if last year is the ceiling, is that good enough? Right? Like if last year is the ceiling of Jalen Hurts, is that good enough if my defense isn't what it was last year? Right? Like that's what really separates guys. Like, I know we forget about Joe Burrow because he was hurt most of the year, but the Joe Burrows, the Patrick Mahomes, like the very top tier of guys in the league, that's what separates them is their ceiling is high enough as quarterbacks that they make up for other things on the team, right? We've seen Patrick Mahomes win a ton with some subpar defenses, and now the defense is getting better, right? But this year we saw him win a ton with subpar skill position players. We've seen him win with subpar offensive line play. We've seen him win with deficiencies in a bunch of different areas. Jalen Hurts is possibly, I don't want to make a declaration on his career yet, but if you watch what happened last year versus what happened this year, he's a guy that might need a lot to go right in order to take your team to a Super Bowl. And this is a dramatic example, but I think it's fair. Like Jimmy Garoppolo was that kind of quarterback with the 49ers, not in terms of style, not in terms of like, I think Jalen Hurts is a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo, but in terms of how much he elevates your team, Jimmy Garoppolo needed a lot to go right to get to the 49ers to that Super Bowl. Ironically, also lost a close game to the Chiefs, like Jalen Hurts did. Jalen Hurts, I think, might be one of those guys that needs a lot to go right around him for for him to be a big-time winner in the NFL. And listen, that's not knocking Jalen Hurts. Most quarterbacks are those guys. Notice that I named 2 guys in the entire league that I could think of off the top of my head that I don't think fall into that category. Joe Burrow, who's taken some super flawed Cincinnati teams deep into the playoffs, including a Super Bowl, and Patrick Mahomes, which doesn't need any explanation, right? Tom Brady was one of those dudes. There were a lot of times on that Patriots team where he covered up for deficiencies, whether it was in the skill, usually it was in skill positions because Bill Belichick didn't like paying for those outside of when he got Randy Moss on the cheap, right? But Jalen Hurts just might be one of those guys. And coming out of last year, I think more people, myself included, would have expected him to take that next step, maybe not being in the Burrow, Brady, Mahomes category, but being that next step into maybe Lamar Jackson territory, right? If you had said Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts last year, remember, Lamar Jackson's hurt a ton of last year. Jalen Hurts just took a team to a Super Bowl. The conversation is actually interesting, right? If you say that this year, people laugh at you.
Well, and even if Jalen Hurts was what he was last year, I think the Eagles win that game last night. I don't know if the Eagles go to the Super Bowl.
No, but they probably win last night.
But I bet they win the game last night. And
that's not a great Tampa Bay team. Like, let's not pretend. They only got in because they won a bad division.
It's a horrible division. The Bucs are horrible.
They're not good.
Their defense is just as bad as the Eagles. And they have Baker Mayfield starting at quarterback. And now I know Baker Mayfield used to be the number one overall pick, but guess what? Like, sometimes that doesn't matter. When you get to the NFL and you don't perform.
He hasn't been that guy for a while.
You're not a very good quarterback. You talk about not having certain weapons. Let's just go through it, okay? I know the Eagles didn't have A.J. Brown, but if they would have had A.J. Brown against Mike Evans, you would call that a wash.
Yeah.
You look at Chris Godwin and Devontae Smith, you'd give the edge to Devontae Smith.
Absolutely.
You look at Trey Palmer and I don't even know.
I mean, their third guy last night was, he hasn't hardly played for him. You had Julio Jones for a minute.
Watkins?
Probably Watkins.
Maybe Jones. I mean, Jones played pretty well down the stretch of the season.
Yeah, he didn't play for him for a ton.
But those guys are kind of non-existent to one another, right?
Yeah.
Then you have Cade Otton against Dallas Goedert. You're going to take Dallas Goedert over Cade Otton.
Yeah.
You'll probably take Rachaad White over DeAndre Swift.
Yeah.
And that may be the only edge
but
that the
close.
Bucs have against you.
Probably close.
All that being said, who has the better weapons? It's the Eagles.
Philadelphia, yeah.
It's the Eagles. Even though A.J. Brown didn't play, it's still the Eagles with the better weapons. Now, maybe it became a little more even because of that, but still, it's the Eagles. Mm-hmm. And when the Eagles lose in the way that they did to one of the worst teams in football, and the Tampa Bay Bucs, and the reason that the Bucs have 9 wins, what is it, 10 now? The reason the Bucs have 10 wins is because they play the Saints. It's because they play the Panthers
and Falcons.
And the Falcons.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason right there the Bucs have as many wins as they do. If they played any other team and any other conference and conference division, that would be a lot different. The Bucs wouldn't be in the playoffs. So all of that needs to be factored in to this whole conversation of what went wrong for the Eagles. Because how fitting is it that you lose to one of the worst teams in the playoffs?
I think they only had, if I'm looking right here, the Buccaneers, I believe, had 1 win over just looking quick here, I believe they had 1 win over another team that made the playoffs this year, and that was the Green Bay Packers. So
they were the last team in the NFC.
That's where we're looking at. That's that Bucs team that just whooped up on the Eagles last night. Coming up next, we'll set up the show. Have more for Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back.
Racked up, Jalen Hurts for a safety.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Third down. 6 dropping Hurts. Hurts is in trouble in his own end zone. He's going to be sacked for a safety. Anthony Nelson did not give up and racked up Jalen Hurts for a safety.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi, Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We are live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Of course, you can always give us a call on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline, 888-638-4876. Coming up on the show today, in about half hour, we're going to talk to our old friend DB, Damon Benning, joining us at 8 o'clock. At 8:45, we're going to reconnect with Adam McClintock, who we only had for a few minutes on Friday because of some technical difficulties, but we will have him at 8:45 today. And luckily for us, actually, some more things have happened in college football coaching since Friday, so actually probably a better time.
It was good to kind of break in the action there.
Yeah, probably a better time to talk to Adam today than it would have been even on Friday. And then Mike Schaefer will be joining us at 9 o'clock from Husker 24/7. And then we'll wrap up the show with some Hurrdat hot seat for you as well. Before we get into any of that, though, we did have some news last night as well that came out during that Philadelphia game that the Atlanta Falcons have officially interviewed Bill Belichick for their head coaching job. You wonder if, we talked about this on, I think yesterday, if Pete Carroll maybe would get an interview for that job. He maybe is a little bit of in my mind, maybe a little bit of a better fit there. Although if the Falcons figure out their quarterback situation, I do think they're in a position with where the rest of their roster is to be pretty good right away. They do have the number 9 overall pick. There's also been a lot of speculation that they may trade for Justin Fields, who's from the Georgia area. Obviously, he started his college career at Georgia before moving on to Ohio State. That would make some sense. I don't know that Justin Fields is a Bill Belichick type quarterback, although it probably depends on who he brings in for his offensive coordinator if it's to go that far. But he has officially been interviewed by the Atlanta Falcons, and it's going to be interesting to see what the interest level for him is. We know the Chargers were planning to interview Harbaugh yesterday as well. We assume that happened. I haven't heard any reports since then besides that, hey, they plan to talk to him today. So Chargers talking to Harbaugh. I believe the Raiders are expected to talk to Harbaugh as well, although they might have a full-fledged mutiny on their hands if Antonio Pierce doesn't get that thing. Interesting things happen in the NFL coaching world, and we haven't even figured out if Sirianni's going to have a job tomorrow. I thought McCarthy might be out by this morning, but we talked to Jason Cole yesterday. Mike McCarthy might be the best version of what Jerry Jones wants in a head coach, and that is somebody
that wins the regular season and loses in the first round of the playoffs.
Well, somebody who's competent as a coach, but willing to let Jerry Jones be Jerry Jones, right? Bill Belichick's probably not going to let Jerry Jones be Jerry Jones. And there's going to be a lot of butting of heads over that issue, over Jerry Jones saying things in the media that Bill Belichick doesn't want to get out there and things like that, right? So there's an internal conflict there with the Cowboys job that makes it more difficult to figure out what's going on. With the Eagles job, I don't know how you march Sirianni back out there next year. I really don't.
I thought about a lot of things, and what the first thing that you said there when you mentioned Bill Belichick and the Falcons having talks, I don't even know if Bill Belichick's the best available out there right now.
Yeah.
I still lean Pete Carroll whenever we talk about veteran coaches that are currently available, because when I think Bill Belichick, I think New England with Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm.
And when things didn't go, or when Tom Brady left New England, what was Bill Belichick without Tom Brady? Those are the memories people should be holding on to more than the Super Bowls with Tom Brady. Where you look at Pete Carroll, he's had more of an up and down coaching career, but his ups have been so high that, they don't kind of get overshadowed by anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And so knowing that Pete Carroll has battled through more adversity than Bill Belichick, it makes me believe that if a team is searching for an answer, it's not just, hey, who's won the most? It's, hey, who's gone through it? And that's why I lean Pete Carroll as kind of top of the list of coaches available right now over Bill Belichick. It may sound crazy to say or weird to hear, but if you really look at both of their journeys, you can separate the two and think, okay, if I want somebody that's going to give me a lot of passion on the sidelines, if I want somebody that has been there, done that before, and if I want somebody that's had to recycle what has been given to him,
mm-hmm.
that's Pete Carroll. If I want somebody that is a proven winner, if I want somebody that kind of sticks to himself, but we don't really know what he is capable of without Tom Brady outside of what we've seen the last 3 seasons, I'm going to take the first option. I'm going to take that first guy on that list.
Yeah, I think it depends on what your situation is with your franchise. And I think for the Falcons, Pete Carroll does make more sense. Now, we don't totally know if Pete Carroll wants to continue coaching or if he wants to take the front office role with the Seahawks. So there is another variable there with Pete Carroll. And I don't know. I don't want to be the guy. Like, I agree with you on the Falcons job that Pete Carroll is probably a better fit. But I also am really hesitant to throw away Bill Belichick's contributions to, like, I get that he really didn't do much without Brady. I understand that. I will say he has to get some credit for Brady.
Sure.
Like,
and I won't take that away.
So, like,
but
especially,
I just want people to remember
Sure.
what Bill Belichick was without Tom Brady.
Totally
and it
fair.
wasn't good in New England.
Totally fair. He did have one really good year when Brady got hurt and had Matt Castle. They go 11-5 that year. He did have a playoff year in Cleveland, which is, I mean, not easy to do because it's Cleveland. But you're right. The last few years after Brady left, it has not been good. And you can't unsee that. And I totally get that. But for as much as we blame Belichick for that part of it, which is fair, I think you also have to give credit to Belichick for the front end of what Brady's career was, because it's not like people were knocking down the door to give Tom Brady a chance. Bill Belichick had to go out of his way to keep Tom Brady on the roster. He had to go out of his way to make sure he got reps so that Tom Brady was the backup when Drew Bledsoe went down. He had to go out of his way to get rid of Drew Bledsoe, who was beloved in New England before that. And they traded him to a division rival because he's like, hey, Tom Brady's my guy moving forward. And it's easy to forget now because of what Tom Brady became. Those first 5-6 years in New England, he wasn't a crazy numbers quarterback, right? The first Super Bowl, especially when is his first time starting, his numbers are very pedestrian. And for the few years after that, the numbers are only okay. The numbers go off the charts when Randy Moss gets there. That's when his numbers really take this sonic leap into what we remember Tom Brady being. But that first part of Tom Brady's career, and at least the first 2, maybe 3 Super Bowls, if you want to go all the way through 2004, the numbers for Tom Brady are pretty pedestrian, even for that era. They're good, but they're not what we remember Tom Brady as. It's hard to separate the sections of his career, but especially early Brady, you have to give Bill Belichick a lot of credit for those.
You also have to remember how old Bill Belichick was when things like
that.
Yeah,
he was a lot younger. And
he's a lot
listen,
younger.
If that's the argument, I totally get it. If the argument is hey, but as he aged, he needed more and more help from Tom Brady, I can totally understand that.
Well, but that goes kind of with the whole narrative, right? There's processing speed and how you adapt. And
we're talking about Pete Carroll, who's the exact same age as Bill Belichick. Now he seems younger,
but
he acts younger.
But I don't think so. I think that's
he acts a lot younger.
I think that's a huge thing because his adaptability. I almost said adaptability. His adaptability, to today's game,
totally
is better
fair
than Bill Belichick.
Totally fair. And I listen. I can hear that argument, and that's part of the reason I think in Atlanta specifically, and some of these other spots, he would be a better fit. I just have to take a minute and sit right there. No, sorry, it's Fresh Prince.
This deal or no deal? We're going to break whenever you're opening my case. What is happening?
Just open the case right up. Anyway, I almost got distracted about Deal and No Deal Island. That there's been some commercials.
I have seen, and there's way too many on the stream.
I don't know what's happening. We might have to discuss that at some point. But
does the control that Belichick had make a difference?
Yeah, so I think his biggest failure where the energy became a factor, he didn't have the energy to scout the way he did before. That's, I think, where he fell off the most was in personnel decisions. I still think he can coach. If he's willing to give up personnel decisions, I think that takes a lot off of his plate where he can be a little reinvigorated. But if we're going to talk about Bill Belichick and how Brady helped him to those last 3 Super Bowls, we have to talk about how Belichick carried Brady through the first 3 Super Bowls. Coming up next, we actually want to get to some college basketball. We're about halfway through the season for Creighton and Nebraska. We want to check in, maybe do a little midterm for the 2 teams here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back.
They did a really good job. They did a really good job of packing the line of scrimmage and, forcing us to throw. I'm appreciative of the efforts, but it's not mystical. We didn't do what was required to win tonight. We didn't take care of the ball. We didn't get the ball from them enough in an environment like this, and thus the score. They did a really good job of packing the line of scrimmage and forcing us to throw the ball more vertically, probably. So credit to them.
Radio.
They did a really good job of packing the line of scrimmage and, forcing us to throw the ball more. So credit to them.
We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi, Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. Hello. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. Want to remind you, if you're heading to work this morning, hands on the wheel, eyes and focus straight ahead. As the driver, you have one job, and that is to drive. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Be safe out there. I know it's the roads are getting a little bit clearer, but they're still pretty slick. So make sure you're being safe out there and focused on the road. A little bit of, I don't know if it's breaking news, but just some interesting news. About an hour from now, we'll talk to Adam McClintock and we'll ask him about this. But apparently Brent Brennan, the head football coach at San Jose State University, has been offered the Arizona job. And I got to say, I'm a little surprised here, judging on his record. He's had, outside of 2020, which I know counts, but because of how weird everything is, I kind of put that on the side to just think about. Outside of 2020, he's only had 2 winning seasons, 7-5 and 7-6 respectively. He's been 5-7 a couple times. His first 2 years at San Jose State, 2-11, 1-11. He turned that around, but a little underwhelming for what I was expecting in terms of Arizona's hiring process. I'll be interested to ask Adam McClintock what he thinks about Brent Brennan and if maybe he thought there were some other more interesting names for that job. But he hasn't accepted it, but apparently has been offered. And I have to imagine if the offer got out publicly, then he's probably going to accept, because generally they don't like that getting out if they might have to go to their second choice, right? But much like, ironically enough, I don't know if this is real or not. There's a audio clip going around that's allegedly of Lane Kiffin turning down the Alabama job on a phone call with his agent Jimmy Sexton. I don't know if it's him or not. I don't know if the internet, it's like an AI thing or whatever.
And AI is king right now.
Yeah, so I have no idea. But would it also shock me if they called Lane Kiffin first, or at least called Jimmy Sexton and be like, hey, can you gauge interest here on Lane? No, it wouldn't shock me. I think Kalen DeBoer is an excellent hire. I think Lane Kiffin would have been an excellent hire as well. But so for what it's worth, Alabama made it seem like, hey, DeBoer was our guy the whole time, because that's how you have to make it seem, right?
Lane Kiffin's daughters probably made this video.
It's entirely
if it was AI. It was probably done by them so that Lane could get more popularity on social media.
Well, and Jimmy Sexton's always trying to get those raises for his clients, and he does a pretty good job of it. Allegedly, like 3 or 4 different guys that he represents got raises off of that Alabama job. So he's just out there doing his Scott Boras work. But wanted to get to college basketball here. We're about at the midway point for both Creighton and Nebraska. Creighton 13-4, 4-2 in the Big East. They've won their last 4 after dropping their first 2 in conference. Nebraska sitting at also 13-4, but 3-3 in Big Ten play, having lost 2 of their last 3. But sandwiched in there is a great win against Purdue. And so we wanted to see, about 17 games in, we are just past the halfway point in the regular season, about the halfway point if you want to include conference tournaments here, because never know how many games they're going to play in the conference tournament. But we're just past the halfway mark in college basketball this season, and it seems appropriate to kind of do a health check, a temperature check of these 2 programs. You want to start with Creighton or Nebraska?
Let's start with Nebraska.
Okay, with Nebraska. Here's the resume real quick, right? Okay, they are, again, 13-4, 3-3 in conference. Their best win by far against Purdue. They've also got a Michigan State win, which Michigan State's starting to maybe try and figure things out a little bit. So that might end up being a good win by the end of the season. They have a win against Kansas State, who I think is probably a tournament team, although I don't know. They're probably going to be a bubble team. But I think Kansas State has a chance to make the tournament. And then they got a win over Indiana, who's currently 12-5 overall and 4-2 in the conference. Indiana, at least currently, on pace to be a tournament team as well. Although I wasn't blown away by Indiana, but Nebraska played against them really well. Key losses, obviously, you have the loss to Minnesota, which is the worst loss of the season. Minnesota
still could age well.
It could age well. Minnesota's 12-5. They're 3-3 in conference. They're a little bit better than we expected them to be. They're certainly better than they looked in the moment when that loss came. It was a Big Ten road game loss, so not the end of the world. Obviously, they had the big loss against Creighton, and then they got beat up a couple times with Wisconsin and at Iowa. Ironically enough, that Iowa loss may end up aging the worse.
I think so, too, because they're a team that sits in the middle of the pack. They have a lot of boom nights, but also a lot of bus nights.
Yeah.
But that Wisconsin one will be fine.
Yeah, the Wisconsin loss isn't bad.
Wisconsin's going to make it into the tournament like that.
Top 25 on the road. Like it didn't look great, right? The visuals of it didn't look great, but
what's funny about it is Nebraska played a good game.
Offensively.
They had a really good shooting performance, but even defensively, if Wisconsin didn't shoot 50% from downtown, and if Nebraska could guard the perimeter a smidge better, that wouldn't have it would have been a lot closer. 20-point loss.
It would have been a lot closer. I don't know if they would have won, but it would have been a lot closer. But again, it's a top 25 loss on the road in conference, and nobody cares. Like, that's not a bad loss. That game actually bumps your RPI up. Like, that's fine. Or your net up, I guess, now. Speaking of net, want to give the net rankings here.
Well, as you pull those up, I want to say one more thing about Nebraska.
Absolutely.
Here. They're 13-4 right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you would have told anyone that this team would be 13-4 at this point in the season with a win against the number 1 team in the country, you could expect 100% of people to take that.
Absolutely would have taken
16 wins last year, 10 wins the year before, 7 wins the year before, 8 wins the year before. They have 13 wins right now and still have the season to go. And what? You need 7 to get into the NCAA tournament?
I'd feel good about 7 more, and you're in. Yeah.
You're taking that all day long.
Absolutely.
If you were giving a letter grade to this team, well, you can't spell B without Nebraska, plus some other letters. So let's give them a B+.
So in the Ken Palm, they're 49. In the net rankings, they are 53. Ken Palm has them favored to win in 8 games left, and they are basically coin flips in 3 more. So this is a team that those are 10 viable wins on the schedule. You only have to get 7 of them. That's even including like Ohio State as a sure on the road as a sure loss, which I don't necessarily buy. That's including
not the way they're playing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. That's including like Maryland as a possible loss. Like there's wins in there as well that I think Nebraska could possibly get. So you've got 10 to maybe 11 winnable games in there. And I'm taking like Illinois on the road. I'm taking that off the table. Like that's a really tough game. Top 10 road opponent. Like that's a really tough game. So I'm taking some of those away. But you win 7 out of those 11 games, you're in good shape. You win 6, I still think you have a shot, especially if you win in your first round of the NCAA, or not the NCAA, the Big Ten tournament.
But things become contingent on how you perform.
If you win 7 on the
stage.
if you win 7 on the way out here, you're in really good shape. 7 of their last 14 is what they have left. You go 500 on the way out, you're good to go. You gave them a B.
I said plus.
Oh, B+.
Because I said you have to add more letters to Nebraska in order to
fair.
Nebraska.
I'm kind of on the border for Nebraska between. I think I'm going to go A- here.
And that's an okay grade too. And if they would have lost to Purdue, I bet you would have fallen into the B's.
Yeah. And if they had beaten either Wisconsin or Iowa, I probably bump them up to a regular A.
Yeah, I think a B+ is kind of like perfect for this team though, because of some of those losses that you already touched on. The loss against Minnesota should not have happened.
Right. The Iowa one as well. Again, both Big Ten road games, but those are games that you probably need to win if you're an NCAA tournament team. The Minnesota one is their only loss outside the Ken Palm top 50. Their other losses, Creighton is 15 in Ken Palm, Wisconsin's 9, Iowa's 43. Those are all very reasonable and explainable losses there. The Minnesota one sticks out a little bit, and that's definitely one they want back. But
because they had it. They had it majority of that game. I mean, you have the lead going into half. Minnesota's without their best player. It was set up to be a W, and Nebraska got too comfortable.
They fumbled it
and allowed the Golden Gophers to come back in that game.
They fumbled that one for sure. There's really no way around it, and that's fine. You can't go back and change it. I mean, I'm sure Creighton would go back and change that UNLV game if they could. That's the one that really sticks out for them.
Yeah. We can get into them.
Yeah, we'll hit on Creighton at 8:30. We've got a little bit of time in the 8:30 hour, or in the 8:30 time slot. But coming up next, we're going to talk to our old friend Damon Benning. Want to get his thoughts on some of the NFL games from this weekend, as well as the kind of coaching carousel that we've seen start spinning again here in the last week or so. Seems like it's maybe starting to settle down in college, but NFL, I got some question marks as to where some of these teams are going to go.
Even with the Steelers, DB's team, and Mike Tomlin walking off the set when he was about to be asked about his contract.
Interesting stuff going on in the NFL. Coming up next, we'll talk to our friend Damon Benning here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, of course, on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
We will be back We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
They did a really good job of packing the line of scrimmage and, forcing us to throw the ball more vertically, probably a little bit more vertically than we wanted to. We adjusted. We started doing that. And we started moving the football. So credit to them.
Welcome back. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi, Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. Joining us now on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline is our old friend, Damon Benning. DB, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, good morning, fellas. What's going on?
What is up, DB?
I was looking for a retweet, but nobody posted that I was going to be on, so I almost forgot.
I almost forgot, too, that I had a show today.
Yeah, I didn't see anybody tweet out the lineup, which is
wait a minute. Are your days messed up, AR?
Nah, it's the weather. The weather's getting to my head.
It is something else. and you guys both know me, I never complain about the cold, but it is goodness, it is it's different out. That's for sure. I don't remember a stretch this long.
Hey, answer this for me, because I was thinking about the Chiefs game over the weekend. What was the coldest game you've ever played in?
So I think it was probably Oklahoma in Lincoln. Was it 93 maybe? I get them confused. It was 93. I was at our place, and it was probably, I don't know. It wasn't like this, that's for sure. Maybe 20, 25. I haven't played anything really bone chilling. I had a high school game. We played prep one time at Northwest when the field was still grass that was like the snow, sleet, rain. Like it was snowing, but it was wet snow. That was probably the worst conditions just because, the field was so chewed up. But like bitter cold, there haven't been too many, but I would definitely say that Oklahoma game in Lincoln.
DB, I was listening to some of the players talk about, they've got the heated benches now and they got like the heated floor mat. Like you guys didn't have any of that, right? You're just like sitting on these steel benches out there. Like you guys are freezing. It's a little bit easier now.
And it's weird too, because now it's okay to sit down. Like you didn't used to want to sit down in weather like that. You wanted to keep moving and I'd like to see if I could pull it off. Like I don't want to get hit in it. Don't get me wrong, but I would like to see, like, does that work? Like, you sit down, you put a coat on, you stay warm, and then you get up and you get going. The NFL is really good at it. Like guys can sit until the last millisecond before they go out and play. Like they go grab their hat and it's like a change of possession or their helmet. I'm like, guys are ready to go. I mean, they take much better care of their bodies now, so it's all good. I'm still learning. Well,
DB, you're kind of a fidgety guy. You don't like really sitting around anyway.
No, I certainly wouldn't sit on the bench. Sometimes the defensive guys would do that, or maybe the O-line would sit for like a couple of seconds or minutes, but they would always be up and moving around by the time they got the ball back. I mean, unless it was a sudden change, but I don't know. Skill guys don't sit around much.
Was that a TO thing, like guys not sitting down, or was that just a you guys thing?
I don't know. I think it was so far away from the action, you were supposed to support your teammates.
Okay. So
you always had to, he wanted you in the game, and the NFL is obviously a little bit different. Like those guys, they each side of the ball goes and does their thing, and even at the high school level, if we have guys that aren't going two ways, like we'll take the guys that aren't in, and we'll make sure, at least defensively, like we'll make sure that we're talking to the guy, Bo Ryan, or somebody's not in, or Teddy. Like we're trying to relay information. So maybe that's kind of the thing now. I don't know.
DB, let's talk a little bit about some of those NFL games yesterday. I spent a good portion of yesterday's show dogging on Dallas. And I told Ravi when I walked in today, I can't honestly sit here and not do the same thing to the Eagles. How much of a deep reevaluation needs to be done with that team after coughing up a 10-1 start?
Yeah, I think Sirianni may be in big trouble. The Laurie group, they make moves, and they've gotten rid of better coaches under more advantageous winning circumstances. So, I just, whatever happened with AJ Brown and him kind of working his way out, and the poor morale. I knew depth was kind of a thing, but I didn't think they would get away from the run game the way that they did. I thought it was interesting. We talk about, high-low concepts and dime packages and all these schemes. Listen, every game in the NFL, the team that ran the ball for more yards won, and the team that won the turnover battle won. There wasn't one team. Now, there were, I think, 2 games where there weren't turnovers. I don't think there was a turnover last night. And there was probably one more where there weren't, maybe the Rams and Lions maybe. But for the most part, if you ran the ball better and you at least were even in the turnover margin, you won the game. And I think we try to make it really, really fancy, but I don't really know if it is. Run the football, take good care of the ball, and here's the other thing: how poor was the tackling?
I would say tackle. Is tackle the last one there?
the last 3 days of football, the tackling has been atrocious. So you have got to get guys to the ground. The league is just too good, and these offenses, it's almost like they have to get penalties or drop balls to not be able to move the ball. It is a very offensive league, so you better get guys to the ground.
We're talking with Damon Benning, former Husker and current radio analyst for the Husker Radio Network. You can hear him with Greg Sharp for all the Nebraska football games. DB, speaking of coaches that may or may not be a little bit of trouble, I know you probably don't want him to go anywhere for your Pittsburgh Steelers, but there was a little bit of a contentious moment as Mike Tomlin walked off the podium last night as somebody was about to ask about his contract status. What are your thoughts on his kind of tenure here in Pittsburgh? And I mean, I assume you don't think he's going anywhere, but what do you think about that whole situation with Tomlin in Pittsburgh?
Well, it's rare for me because we've never had this conversation, and he's been in the final year of his deal.
Mm-hmm.
So, you always have to weigh that. And, typically there's guys that are close to him in the league that I pay attention to. I mean, Jay Glazer gets knocked for a lot of things, but he and Coach Tomlin have a really, really good relationship. And, I caught what Ryan Clark said, a couple of weeks ago about wanting, no, this was pre the Steelers going on their run,
mm-hmm.
but, he thinks that Tomlin would be best served going someplace else. And I don't know. I mean, I like Mike Tomlin. I love Mike Tomlin. I'm one of those guys. I always listen to his press conferences. I buy into a lot of his philosophy, the standard is the standard, things like that. But, the Steelers just can't get their offensive coordinator thing right.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the things that's kind of plagued this organization. They've been able to mask and kind of cover up some shaky quarterback play. That I think everybody can see that. But for them, you've had a couple of offensive line coaches in the last 6 years. You've had to swap out your offensive coordinators for a team that's blueprint has been built on defense and toughness. I think they kind of got to roll with the times here a little bit and get a little more offensive minded in terms of having some success. But as far as Mike Tomlin goes, he's earned the right to kind of do what he wants. I would hate to see him coach another football team, but I definitely couldn't see him in studio as some sort of analyst either. I don't see that in his future, but he's a young guy.
Yeah.
Right. So he's got a lot ahead of him. He would be one of those guys that I would never see in another uniform. So for me, I hope it's Steelers or bust.
DB, Dan Quinn can't be the hot commodity on the coaching market anymore.
Yeah, I don't
after
get it.
That performance, right?
I don't get it. I just all the rumors, even before that game was played, right? You saw the memes and GIFs and wait, Andrew, I'm talking to you. That's right. We're back. So it's GIFs, right?
It
Not
is GIFs.
GIFs.
Okay.
It's GIFs like the peanut butter.
I remember that.
I will fight both of you.
So, all
would
right,
probably
fine. I'm whatever you guys want it to be. Ravi, if I'm talking to you,
hey, don't cave, DB. Just because it's 2024, you don't have to cave.
All right, fine, Ravi. It's Jeff.
Yeah, get him.
I'm like that great Belgian waffle this morning. No,
are you calling from Switzerland?
Yes.
It's not where Belgian waffle comes from, bud.
Yeah.
I'm talking about keeping the peace,
I'm just
Ravi.
keep it neutral. Keep it. I'm vibing with the AR. So, I forgot the question.
We were talking about Dan Quinn and the hot commodity.
Yeah, Dan
on the
Quinn.
market.
See, I didn't get it right. So you saw the memes and his mind was elsewhere. And now listen, I got to be honest. Remember when he was hired? I said he was probably the best non-playing hire that was made for what that team needed when Dallas got him a couple years ago. So I'm not knocking the hustle. I think he's good at what he does. What I didn't understand is how we get to retread is maybe a little harsh with Quinn, but how do we not, if we're gonna go back to the Petersons of the world and Frank Reichs and Dan Quinn's, like I don't understand. And I went on this little tirade the other day on social media, like even Bill Belichick, the whole Bill Belichick to Dallas thing makes me chuckle, right? Because what is it from afar where you think to yourself, hey, you know what? I'm pretty controlling guys like Stephen and Jerry Jones. Yeah, tell you what, why don't they go get another guy that is equally as domineering with his personality and see how that works? Like how long would Bill Belichick listen to Stephen and Jerry Jones tell him how to shop for groceries?
3 minutes.
Right? I mean,
Not long.
Like he Belichick's not a young 71, right? Like he acts every bit of 71. Mm-hmm. So, I got on the Carroll kick just because of his success, and I think people would be shocked. I only gave a few coaches whose win percentage he was better than at 58% in the NFL, with only 4 losing seasons as a coach, and since the Jets in '94, like Chuck Noll, Chuck Knox, Mike Shanahan, Jim Coughlin, like the guy is a winner. So unless he doesn't want to coach, I don't think he was really vibing with Allen's presser that, hey, Pete's got a role in the front office, and I get it, right? I don't know if he wants to be an advisor. Mm-hmm. But I don't get the Quinn thing. I get waiting on Harbaugh, because he could have his pick of the litter. I would get Belichick with the right organization. He would need a very mature group that needs, they have to have an owner that is fairly hands-off, a mature group that just needs, like the discipline hump. You know what I mean? A team that can they're close, maybe like Philly.
I was gonna say, it sounds like you're describing Philadelphia.
Something like that. You have to have a tough-minded quarterback. But yeah, Philly would be a much better fit for me than let's say Dallas if I was gonna go make a run at Belichick. But back to the original question, I don't get the Dan Quinn thing at all. And that Dallas, that defense was so good at times where you just thought if a quarterback dropped back, there's no way he's going to have enough time. And they got their hands on a ton of balls, and you got young guys breaking records for pick sixes and touchdowns. And then Aaron Jones does he have a house in the Metroplex?
It's a winter home. It's in Dallas.
He owns those guys.
Yeah.
And how happy are you? And I hate to say this, I know, Bears, I'm talking to a Bears fan, but it's like you look at what Love has been able to do by being patient and kind of staying the course. And, he's off Malign, and, he sat behind Rodgers. To kind of see him play well, I think is a pretty cool story. For whatever the reason, I like when that old North Division or Central Division is good, right? The grimy Bears and the gutty Lions and, the good Packers and, the horn blowing in minute. Like, I like that division. I like the NFL when it is good. So it's kind of cool to see the Lions and the Packers, especially with the Lions, or excuse me, with Green Bay playing so well.
But both teams can lose now.
Yeah, that's like, I've got San Francisco winning the Super Bowl, and I was like, well, I think the best matchup would be against the Ravens, and I felt like I needed a shower just to even spit that out there. I mean, there's just 3 teams that I really, 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 really dislike, right? Baltimore, Cleveland, and Dallas, as a Steelers fan. So that. But I do think those are the 2 best teams left, Kansas City's always going to be in the hunt because you have Patrick Mahomes, and so he's always going to give you a chance. And how situationally good is Chris Jones?
Yeah,
right? He's pretty underappreciated. When they need a guy to make up, he just can summon his best football when the Chiefs need him to play well. And I've been in love with that secondary for a couple of years now. So, I mean, you've always got a chance. And I watch Buffalo, systematically take Pittsburgh apart. When Buffalo runs the football, man, they are a handful because they make you play with all 11 guys, and you have to get in the run fits because they got two good tight ends. We know about the passing game. And when Cook is running the ball with Allen's ability to break your back on those scrambles, the AFC is going to be very interesting. I kind of hope. I used to be I still am. Hey, I want people to play in the conditions, right? I want Bama to have to go to Ann Arbor to play in January, right? Expansion of the playoffs and home sites, that part would be appealing, right? I think football's not always meant to be played in the southeastern corridor or on the West Coast, right? So I want elements to matter, but I almost don't in the NFL this year because I just want to see. Everybody has questions. Can Kansas City be efficient enough on offense? And are these the last great days of Kelsey? Baltimore, can Lamar Jackson get them over the hump to get to the promised land? Is Josh Allen going to take good enough care of the ball enough to give the Bills a chance, or will this be another squandered season? The storylines aren't near as juicy in the NFC, but because I think it's the Niners and everybody else. But man, with the way Detroit can move the ball and the completeness that Green Bay's offense is showing, it's going to be a nice little tough stretch run.
DB, you want to change gears here on you real quick? I have about 5 minutes left and ask you about some of the college coaching movement that we've seen over the last week or so. I don't think we've talked to you since Kalen DeBoer got named the head coach at Bama. Obviously, then Jed Fish goes to Washington, and now it seems like Brent Brennan is going to end up at Arizona. First, how do you think Kalen DeBoer fits in Alabama? That's a part of the country he hasn't really coached in before. I kind of lean to the, hey, if you can coach, you can coach, and it fits a lot better when you start winning. But I know that's something that between that and his maybe recruiting prowess, the one things that's been questioned about that hire.
Yeah, so I think offensively, I like what philosophically he can bring to the table, especially, Grubbs, if he keeps a good portion of that staff intact, if they come with him in Alabama, I think there'll be a handful situationally for defenses in the SEC. I wish I knew more about kind of his temperament in terms of dealing with what comes with that job, because it's like, I've heard a ton of Nebraska coaches say, well, we had an idea and then you get here and it's something different than what you thought. And I wonder if it's like that with Alabama, because remember, they went through coaches like a hot knife through butter before they landed on Saban. So if he's built with some sort of security where he can take what comes with the comparisons and the criticism, because the passion of that fan base will be, 50 times greater than what it was in Washington. So he's got to be able to kind of weather that storm, and you never know until you go through it. Right. So I think that's one of the things that I don't know, but I do like the hire. I thought he or Lanning would be really, really good, but I get why Lanning didn't want, well, if allegedly, if he was kind of the choice before DeBoer, because I think he likes the move to the Big Ten Conference. I think he thinks he can have success in the Big Ten Conference. He potentially sees Jim Harbaugh leaving. He's had good success. Oregon's had good success with Ohio State. I think Lanning feels like he can do what he needs to do. They're really set up well from an NIL standpoint. So I get why Lanning, and they're going to get their money too, right? I mean, Oregon's they have money. They're going to get money from the Big Ten. So I get why Lanning stayed put.
All right, DB, about 2 minutes. Compare it to what happened to Solich after following T.O. Even the really good seasons tend to not be good enough for either a program or a fan base. Do you think DeBoer is built to last at Alabama?
See, that's the thing. You need a couple of guys on. You have to surround yourself, and this is almost anybody at any job. You need a couple of folks that can keep you grounded, right? Where situationally they can say, "Hey, listen, Coach DB or Coach Kalen or whatever they call him. Hey, we're kind of getting away from this. Hey, don't worry about this. Hey, this over here is going on. You just do this." If he sets up his staff in such a way to kind of insulate him from the background noise, and it's not going to be soundproof, right? It's not. You're still going to hear, but you can't listen. If he can build a staff like that, you're going to give yourself a chance. I think the one thing, maybe a couple things Coach Solich maybe would have done different was to be really, really cognizant of what was going on around him when folks thought he wasn't having as good a success, right? Hey, Coach, we may need to shake this up in recruiting. Hey, we maybe need to tweak this here. Like, if you can surround yourself with kind of some folks that keep eyes out for you, that allow you to still do what you're really good at to accentuate your strengths, you give yourself a chance. So if DeBoer can do that, I think you can filter the noise because they'll have success. The other thing is, who's really going to be dominant in the conference? I think there's only really one team right now, and I'm not even going to say Ole Miss. I saw what they did in the portal, and Kiffin has quietly done a fantastic job at Ole Miss. But Georgia's really the only team whose roster is like, oh, okay, I could see some dominance. But with a 12-team playoff and new teams coming to the conference, 11-2 may be the new 13-0. So maybe the baseline of the benchmark will lower a little too.
That's our guy, Damon Benning, former Husker radio analyst, and good friend here of the program. DB, we appreciate it as always.
Anytime, guys. Appreciate you.
Always great stuff. Appreciate you, DB.
Coming up next, more Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and we are brought to you by our friends, the Omaha Supernovas. It is getting closer and closer to pro time in Nebraska. Your Omaha Supernovas hit the court for the first ever Pro Volleyball Federation match on January 24th. That's a week from tomorrow against the Atlanta Vibe at the CHI Health Center. First serve is at 7 p.m. You can get season tickets or single match tickets now at supernovas.com. If I remember correctly, they've got some specials they're running right now for tickets as well, so make sure you go check that out. And you can't beat the talent that you're going to see on the floor. NCAA champions, All-Americans, Olympians, all on the floor together. Join the volleyball movement sweeping across the country and see your Major League Volleyball team, the Omaha Supernovas, supernovas.com. Yes, sir.
I'm going to add one more thing in to that, Reed.
Yes, sir.
Because Wednesdays we play trivia on this show.
We do play trivia on the show often.
Tomorrow, Wednesday, Anna Bellinghausen will be here, hopefully, as long as her Camry can get out of the
can get through the parking lot here.
The snow-plowed barricades that tend at like a lot of apartment complexes, like they just push all that snow and block you in, and so small cars can't get out. So if she can't be here, great. If not, we'll do it on stream again. We'll give away some Supernova tickets.
Oh, okay.
So you can either choose Team Ravi or you can choose Team AB, and if you win, we got to call the play.
Yeah.
But if you win based on who wins that round of trivia, you'll be going to the first match.
There you go.
Courtesy of the Omaha Supernovas.
There you go. Good stuff there. So we will give away some Omaha Supernovas tickets tomorrow during our trivia session with Anna Bellinghausen. Right now, though, speaking of Anna Bellinghausen, she covers Creighton for us here at Hurrdat Sports Radio, along with our friend Jacob Padilla. And it's time to give our Creighton midseason grades. We did Nebraska. You gave him a B+. I gave him an A-. Snarky TK on the YouTube comments goes, renowned Nebraska ball hater Ravi Lulla gives them an A-. Wow. And I said, no. No.
Get him.
I say, no. I'm not a hater of Nebraska. I'm a hater of bad basketball, and they don't play bad basketball anymore. So I don't hate on them anymore.
Talk about playing the Uno reverse card.
Listen, I don't like bad basketball.
That's like taking a shot without taking a shot. Am I right, Shane?
Listen, if you're a Nebraska basketball fan and you try and deny that they've played bad basketball for a really long time, I don't know what to tell you. All right, because it's been bad. They don't play bad basketball anymore. I don't hate anymore. It's a pretty simple equation here, guys.
He brought a knife to a gunfight. Jeez.
The Creighton Blue Jays, their resume so far, they are 13-4, 4-2 in the Big East. They're currently in third place, one game back of Seton Hall and UConn, who are both 5-1. They are number 13 in the net rankings, and they are 15th on KenPom. That is your general rankings there. They have a loss to Colorado State, who's currently a top 25 KenPom team. Not a bad loss at all. A loss to Villanova, a number 26 KenPom team in overtime. Not a bad loss at all. And a road loss to Marquette, number 17 in KenPom. The outlier here, much like the Minnesota loss for Nebraska, is UNLV. It was a neutral site game. Technically, it was in Nevada, but not at their home stadium. UNLV, 85 in the KenPom, very similar to the 90s that I believe 92 Minnesota was for the Nebraska loss. So similar in that sense for Nebraska and Creighton in their resumes. For me, my grade is going to be based off of expectations coming into the year.
You and me both.
So that I think is really important because with Nebraska, they have outperformed my expectations because I thought, okay, they're losing Sam Griesel, they're losing Derek Walker. Those were the two best players on the team last year. Without those guys, they are well below 500 last year. I thought that was I was really impressed with the way they've been able to adapt to life without those two guys. Okay. So that factors into the grade. On the other side of things, I thought at times Creighton this year has looked way more stagnant on offense than I would like to see. Now, listen, they're a top 25 KenPom offense. It's not like they're a bad offensive team.
But they also opened the season as the 8th best team in the country.
Sure, right? So this is a team that, and again, the raw numbers you look at and you're like, okay, these aren't bad. But as you watch them, there's stretches throughout games that you're like, man, the offense is the ball is really sticking. People aren't really moving. They're kind of just passing around the perimeter. They're not getting much in terms of good looks. And you kind of have stretches like that in a lot of games for Creighton. And so that's baked into my grade here. I'll let you go first. Where were you at with Creighton on your midseason grade?
Well, you hit the nail on the head with the worst loss was UNLV. And it's hard to give this group, with the expectations they had coming into the season, anything higher than a B at this point. And, right now they're finding ways to win, which is very, very good for this team, but it's also very good toward their letter grade. Because if they didn't beat St. John's the other night, you'd probably see me looking at the C+ range. But because they found a way to win on a night that St. John's actually game planned better than Creighton, they did everything. If you look at keys to the game for both sides, St. John's checked off all three and still lost that basketball game. But great teams find ways to win even when things aren't going right. And that's what Creighton is right now. They have the pieces. We talked about the loss of Ryan Nembhard to open things up this season, and people instantly just slotted Stephen Ashworth as a better fit for this team. And, that may still be the case, but I also don't know if it totally is the case anymore, because you're really missing that element that Nembhard brought by getting to the rack. Now, you talk about sticky fingers, like the ball stuck to Nembhard's hands a lot whenever he was a part of this team. And so in terms of ball movement and who gets involved, it's better to have Ashworth on the floor. But that ability to score, it seemed like had a little bit more of a chance with Nembhard than it does with Ashworth, because I don't know if Trey gets to the rack enough to instantly boost up that offensive grade that I'd like to see that Nembhard brought last year. But I'm still not taking away what Creighton's doing right now, because what are they, top 3 in 2-point scoring?
Yeah, they're one of the best 2-point shooting teams in the country. They're incredibly efficient on the inside.
15, 16 in offense? We talked to Ba. I think Ba said 15 on last week.
After the St. John's game, I think they're top 25 offense, they're number 15 or 13 defense. So
again, I'm not tearing down this offense by any means, but I would like to see somebody And maybe it's Shireman. Maybe I'm not giving Shireman enough credit for getting to the rack.
He's been a lot more
year,
aggressive.
But just finding somebody that can get to the hole on a consistent basis. And that's kind of what Nembhard did for this team last year. Was it always what you wanted to see? No, but I do want to see a little bit more of that to open things up around.
So what I still think Ashworth is a better fit, but I don't think they've done a good enough job of adjusting what they tried to do last year with what they need to do this year, right? So last year, the last few seasons, really, you go to Marcus Zagorowski, you go to Mo Watson, so that's going back 7-8 years now. You go to Ryan Nembhard. There's a lot of very pick and roll heavy offense for Creighton, which shifted away from kind of a more ball movement offense that Coach McDermott had run previously. I think they need to shift a little bit more back to the ball movement offense, and they've started to. You don't see them run nearly as many pick and rolls as they do, as they did with Ryan Nembhard last year. But as they continue to shift into that, there's lots of different ways to accomplish the same thing that Ryan Nembhard did, and that's to get a piece of the paint. We talked about this with Nick Baugh last week. One of those ways is to make sure you are getting Ryan Kalkbrenner touches in the paint. That compromises.
And they're starting to do that more.
Yes, and they're doing that better. Shireman's been more aggressive to the rack, which is important. Trey Alexander seems like he's finding his footing again after being really good in the early season, then having a little bit of a drought in the kind of that mid.
I'd like to see
December.
more of that, though, too.
I agree. And I do think Stephen Ashworth has gotten a little bit more aggressive to the rim as well and being less of just a spot-up shooter. I think that there is a plan there that makes this a better roster fit than what we've seen currently. But based on what we've seen so far, I can't judge on what I think can or will happen. I have to judge based on what I've seen so far. I'm actually at a C+ with this team. I think they have basically met or slightly less than met expectations. And aesthetically, it hasn't looked quite as smooth as I would have liked to have seen. But again, does that mean they're not as good of a team as Nebraska? No, what it means is based on expectations and based on what they think their roster is. Currently, I think Nebraska's outperforming their roster. Right now, I don't know that Creighton is to the same extent. That's why the grades are different for me. I think Creighton has a better roster. I think at times this year, Nebraska's played better basketball with the roster they have. So for me, it's a C+ for Creighton right now. But again, with the things we talked about, I do think there's still a ton of upside for this team.
A lot of upside.
And I think they can get it fixed before the end of the season. We'll see. KenPom has them favored in all but 2 of their final 14 games in the regular season.
You can bet when I go to Vegas, they're winning the title.
Coming up next, Adam McClintock, college football professor on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We are joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline by Adam McClintock, the college football professor, co-founder of Matrix Analytical. Adam, how are you this morning?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Good, man. Good to hear from you.
I was saying, I'm glad we could get the technology working today, Adam.
Yeah, that's right.
We're not, listen, we're still frozen, but we're not buried in snow. Well, a little bit, but the roads are open. So
hey, let it go.
I can't let it go.
Let it go.
Adam, it's actually kind of better that we waited until today to get the full interview with you because we've had quite a bit of coaching movement over the last few hours here, or last few days, not hours, sorry. Although we have had a little movement this morning where Brent Brennan from San Jose State it's been reported that he's been offered the Arizona job. I want to start there, and then we can kind of work back on the dominoes that led us there. But your thoughts on Brent Brennan off the top of your head? I'm not going to lie to you and say I've watched a ton of San Jose State football, but I kind of look at his record there and I go, it's a little underwhelming. I'm a little surprised Arizona maybe didn't take a bigger swing than that.
I'm with you. I was. That's a little lackluster of a hire there. If that is who they're going with. I thought that at least they would at least go talk to Jeff Traylor at UTSA or somebody like that who has a little bit better of a resume. But you know, Brent Brennan does have he does have deep ties into the West Coast, and if that's what Arizona's trying to do, then I guess that's the only good reason to go talk to him. But I'm with you. That would be a lackluster hire in my opinion. I think there's other guys out there they need to go talk to.
Well, if you look at where Jedd Fisch ended up, it's a good spot for him at least to go from Arizona to Washington, moving into Big Ten football, which I think is a very good move for the Huskies, seeing as Fisch has Big Ten experience on his resume. And, you know, plus Arizona was a cover machine this year. So I have a kind of an affinity for Jedd Fisch. And I bet other sports bettors out there also share my affinity for him. What should Big Ten fans be expecting from Jedd Fisch in year one in a new conference that looks different from when he was last there?
Well, I think he's an excellent coach. Okay, that was a good hire by Washington. I think they wanted to kind of keep one foot in on the West Coast, which he does have some history on the West Coast. Actually has some history in Pacific Northwest, being with Seattle Seahawks. Mm-hmm. So he's kind of rooted in both places. I think you can expect an offensive head coach who is going to be able to score points. We'll see what he does for his defensive coordinator and how he decides to go with that, because that was what if Arizona had an Achilles heel this year, it was there on the defensive side of the ball. And that as people who follow the Big Ten, you have to play defense in this conference to win consistently. So we'll see if he gets that side of the ball figured out. But he is an excellent offensive head coach, and I think that's what we can expect to see out of him in the Big Ten.
We're talking with Adam McClintock, college football professor and co-founder of Matrix Analytical. I saw a tweet. I don't remember if it was from you or from the Matrix account, Adam, but it seemed like you were teasing a candidate for the Arizona job that you thought would have been a really good fit and a clear candidate. I'm assuming, based on your response, that wasn't Brent Brennan. Can you tell me who that was, or is that part of the business you can't share?
Yeah, I mean, that was we're not working for Arizona, so I can tell you.
My man.
That was Jeff Traylor. I mean,
I
think what that guy has done at UTSA, I mean, and not only the results on the field have been excellent, but look at the coaches he's found and hired. Look at his for a relatively young coach at UTSA, look at some of the coaches that come out of his program. You got Will Stein at Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
You have Looney who's Illinois. You have and he's continually been able to replace those guys that have went to Power 5 programs and still been successful. So I think Jeff Traylor would have been an excellent coach for Arizona to go hire, especially since Arizona is going into the Big 12, which you would think they would want to get a foothold in the Texas recruiting at that point. And there's not very many college coaches that are respected more in the Texas high school football scene than Jeff Traylor.
Adam, another kind of, I thought, puzzling thing over this kind of three jobs that opened up when Kalen DeBoer went to Alabama was it didn't seem like Ryan Grubb got serious consideration for the Washington job. Were you surprised by that at all? Or I'm curious what your models think of Ryan Grubb. And because it seems for a lot of people hard to separate Ryan Grubb's success from Kalen DeBoer's because they've kind of been hand in hand the whole way.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was up for consideration, but I think he was probably if Jed Fish would have politely declined the job, which we all knew that was probably not going to happen. But I think they would have went to Ryan Grubb at that point. But for a program that is moving into a conference like the Big Ten, that the Big Ten is it's a coaching Shark Tank. I mean, there's no better coached conference in the country. So that would be a really tough place for a coordinator to step in a place like Washington and try to cut his teeth in a conference where there's just not a lot of leeway week to week.
Adam, if you followed the odds of who was going to be the next coach at Bama, it started with Lanning, and then that got pulled off, and then it went to Norvell, and that got pulled off, and they finally landed with DeBoer. And it had me thinking, just based off of the way Kalen DeBoer carries himself and the way we've seen him coach stylistically, is he the closest thing to replacing Saban in terms of analytics, or at least in terms of what the analytics tell you? Or should Bama fans be expecting an entirely different system program under this new leadership?
Now, in our rating system, DeBoer is, he's a top 5 head coach in the country. I mean, you're not dropping break. I mean, you can't put him next to Saban because Saban's arguably the best of all time. Okay, so you don't want to put him on that pedestal. But he's of all the coaches that are out there, he's probably the best you're going to get. Okay. The only thing that concerns me about Kalen DeBoer going to Alabama is he's not ever really been known as a powerhouse recruiter. Even at Washington, his recruiting classes were in the 30s, right? So that is going to have to change when he goes to Alabama, because that recruiting is really important, especially to the folks in the SEC who follow that stuff really, really close. Now, I saw that he did hire Kane Womack, from South Alabama to be his defensive coordinator, which is awesome. I mean, that's an awesome hire by Kalen to start off with, and that'll get him some Southern ties down there. But he's going to have to find a couple guys on that staff that can recruit the South and do it well.
You mentioned Womack. That's, according to what you guys see, that was a really good hire for him. How did he grade out while he was at South Alabama?
Oh, he's, as a defensive coordinator, he's one of the better ones in the country. I mean, you remember how he was in Indiana, and it was when Indiana was up and really humming. It was Womack and DeBoer were the coordinators, and as soon as they left, Indiana fell apart. So I mean, that kind of tells you exactly what was driving that success right there at Indiana. So I don't think I don't think it's coincidence that the first hire that Kalen went out and made was he went out and hired Kane back. Kane's he's the best defensive coordinator that Kalen's ever worked with. So I think that's going to Alabama fans should be really, really excited about that hire and should be excited about what's to come.
Adam, I want to circle back to something Andrew kind of hinted at a little bit ago. He mentioned some of the other candidates for this Alabama job, whether it was Lanning, Norvell, Kiffin, obviously DeBoer ends up getting it. You mentioned that Kalen DeBoer is a top 5 college coach in the country, according to you guys. So was he the highest rated guy out of that group as well?
Yes. Yeah, he was the highest.
Who's next out of that group?
Out of that group, let's see here. You said Norvell. You said Kiffin. You said
Lanning.
I think the next one out of that group may have been it's either Kiffin or Norvell. I don't have it right in front of me, but those two are pretty close. I think Norvell would have been a little higher than Kiffin. But yeah, but those two are both towards the the next tier down, top 15 type guys. DeBoer is he's the next level up. I mean, it's Saban, it's DeBoer, it's Kirby Smart, it's Jim Harbaugh. Those guys are Chris Kleiman. Those guys are the top tier in college football right now, according to our ratings.
Hey, I want to take a little bit of a local look here, Adam. Got about a minute left. This was back in early January. I saw that you guys shared that, you were doing your All-American staff, and Rob Dvorak ended up being on the third team there, being the linebackers coach at Nebraska, 29 years old. Just how have you seen him really develop at Nebraska just in 1 year time?
Oh, it's tremendous. For a first year coach to make the our All-American staff, that's tremendous. If you look at some of the names on that list, those are guys who have been in the industry for 6, 7, 8 years, right? So for a guy to crack that in his first year, that's really saying something about what he's done at Nebraska and what he's going to continue to do. I think he's got a future DC written all over him. And I think, he's one of the ones that Nebraska really needs to fight to hold on to.
That's Adam McClintock, college football professor, co-founder of Matrix Analytical. Adam, I anticipate some other Husker assistant news coming in the near future, so we may have to call you back, but we appreciate your time as always.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Professor.
That's Adam McClintock, college football professor, co-founder of Matrix Analytical. Coming up next, we got Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and for this third hour, KFOR in Lincoln. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. If you want to see our bright and shining faces on the video stream, hello. We are brought to you by our friends over at the Warhorse Sportsbook. You know, they say Christmas is the most wonderful time of the year, but I think the Warhorse Festival of Games gives it a run for its money, because you can win either $100,000 as part of the prop card challenge or $20,000 as part of the grand prize drawing. All you got to do is get qualified with entries. Go to the Warhorse Casino in Lincoln. You can get entries for every $50 sportsbook ticket that you get between now and February 1st. That is worth an entry, each one of those. Then just make sure you're a Warhorse Rewards member and validate those entries to be qualified for both the $100,000 prop card challenge, where if you go 25 for 25, you get your shot at $100,000. You go 0 for 25, you still get your shot at $20,000 in the grand prize drawing as well. Go to warhorsecasino.com for more information. Again, this is only for the casino in Lincoln. You got to go visit our friends down at the Warhorse Casino.
Make sure
Lincoln.
to validate it.
Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. Joining us now on that Warhorse Sportsbook hotline is our friend Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7. Schaefer, what's going on, buddy?
Oh, not much. Just admiring Andrew's Lindenwood Lions sweatshirt that he's got going on there. Really nice campus in Lindenwood. Went to the mega camp a few years ago. It was an experience. There's like 1 million recruits at that thing, and just slightly less than 100,000 schools and coaches represented. It's chaos, and they do a really nice job. And they're good people over there.
Yep, LU for life, man. Graduate of, you guys are probably going to like grimace, but graduate in 2018.
Hate it.
Yep.
Might have been the year I was there, too. So
I was going to say, you guys might have ran into each other.
The first time I saw Mike Schaefer, I'm like, gosh, what would be like to have a beard like that?
2018. God. Schaefer, I'm going to talk to just you and me, the old men in the group here for a second.
Oh, sweet. I can go home.
Schaefer, I know that a lot of people are interested in Christian Jones, the highly rated recruit out of West Side. Where right now does Nebraska stand? I think they're planning on hosting him later this month. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have to remember whether he's coming in on the 20th, or for some reason he was going to come in on the weekend after. There's enough, but yeah, they're basically going to have him in the month of January. For some reason I don't think it's happening on the 20th. I could be wrong on that, but I think Nebraska's in a really good spot, and here's why. I think Tony White has done an excellent job explaining to him very, very well how and why he fits in Nebraska's 3-3-5, the different ways that he could be used, why he sort of represents the positionless football sort of idea that they like on defense, that you can take a guy with his build and you can utilize him in different ways. And Christian Jones is a bit of a unicorn in the sense that he is probably better as a coverage linebacker than he might be as just a going forward wrecking ball. Mm-hmm. And that's not something you would expect to say of a guy who's 6'3", 225, moves like he does, hits like he does. But he plays so well in space that teams are really enamored by that. And what do we know that teams everywhere around the country want? They want linebackers that can be able to move in space and cover these giant tight ends and pick up running backs out of the backfield and not just be massive liabilities on swing passes or on these sorts of things. So I think because of his unique skill set, the fact that Nebraska is right next door, Tony White has been working on him for a while. I know when they were going to stop by West Side in December, I think there was a day where it was just Tony White, Caleb Benning, and Christian Jones just in the gym shooting hoops, talking about life, talking about football. And both of those guys just came away with such strong impressions of Tony White because of it. I think there's going to be teams involved. I mean, obviously, you're going to have schools that are really interested, Notre Dame being one of those, like Texas A&M, Tennessee, all sorts of different schools from all sorts of different locations. I think this one is going to go for a while, but I feel like Nebraska's got a pretty comfortable lead. It's just going to be a matter of, can they ultimately sell him that we can get you where you want to go right here at home, and we can get you on the field, and we've got a plan for you. And I think he feels like they do already because of that relationship he has with Tony White.
Schaefer, as if Nebraska fans needed to get more excited about what Dylan Raiola can offer for this team next season. They see a video of him throwing a 70-yard bomb at the Polynesian Bowl, skills competition, whatever they actually like to call it there. With him likely to start at quarterback, not for certain, but just like trending that way.
Certain, assuming health. I think we can just do that.
All right, my man. I appreciate you. I've been on that train.
I don't want to talk around it. Like, I made that decision as soon as it happened, as soon as Kyle McCord wasn't going to happen. We just need to just say it. Like,
Thank you.
There's no reason to talk around it.
I'm with you. I'm 100% there. All right. So my question to you is this: how high will Nebraska fans' expectations be versus how high they should be?
I mean, they're going to be exorbitant. Like, I mean, everything you ever heard about the guy is that he's been groomed to be in this position since he was, in diapers. And so he's the son of a really famous alum whose name, I shouldn't even say alum, famous former player whose name is on the actual stadium for what he accomplished as a player. And so expectations are incredibly high. I mean, he's right now the number one quarterback in the country for 24/7 sports. I think there's some competition between him and DJ Lagway for that. We'll see where it ultimately lands. If he has a good week at the Polynesian Bowl, that'll wipe that away. But I think the expectations are going to be extremely high. I mean, they were really high for Adrian Martinez, and he did not come in with this sort of background or this sort of pedigree, though he was well regarded and he had lit things up in the spring, and people were really excited about him. I anticipate the same for Dylan Raiola. In videos like we saw yesterday. And yes, people on Twitter, I'm aware that you don't get a 15-yard running start on most of your passes unless it's a Hail Mary. It's more the idea that even if he doesn't need that, he can comfortably throw the ball 55 yards down the field and find a Jalen Lloyd or find a Jamal Banks or an Isaiah Nair or what have you. I think it's more of that. But yes, thank you for letting me know that he will not get a 15-yard head start on all of his throws. And he may not have 6 seconds to do that in a college pocket. But yes, we are aware that that was not necessarily the intent of that video. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, he has a special arm. Andrew Ivins, our director of scouting at 24/7, talked about it. He thinks that Raiola has maybe one of the best deep balls he's seen from a high school kid. And so we've talked repeatedly how Nebraska was unable to attack down the field last year. Teams just brought safeties up. They sat on their running game. They took away the quarterback running game, and they couldn't attack downfield despite having weapons like Jalen Lloyd that allow you to stretch the field. So I look at this, Nebraska receivers have to see a highlight that and just know anywhere on the field is attackable. You know, if you can find space deep and you've got your guy burnt and Dylan Raiola can find you, there's a chance for a big play every time that happens. And that makes, I mean, that has to make defensive coordinators' skin crawl. I mean, if he's doing this at 18 years old or 19 years old, what is he going to be in 2 years? I mean, that's the thing about the conversation. Like I'm already sort of looking past what happens in the initial. It's more so with the pedigree and the expectations. If he develops in the way that he can, quite frankly, we've never seen quarterback play like that around Nebraska. And that's the part that has me excited.
We're talking with Mike Schaefer of Husker 24/7. Schaefer, you mentioned the ability to stretch the field in a way that we really didn't see last year. Out of the guys that are in the room already, do you think Nebraska, based on the transfer portal and the guys we saw last year, and maybe some guys we didn't see last year, like Demetrius Bell, do you think they're in a good enough place in the wide receiver room to improve the passing game, even with improved quarterback play?
Yeah, I think they have intriguing options. I mean, obviously, we have to see how these guys develop. We got to see what year 2 looks like for Jalen Lloyd and Malachi Coleman and Jaden Doss. And we want to see what it looks like with Isaiah Nair. Can he have that burst that allowed him to be a deep play threat for Wyoming, that allowed, you know, for the coaches at Texas to go nuts during the camp before he got hurt in 2022 for a guy that was going to start on a team that played in the college football playoff this year. So I think that there's a lot of reason for optimism there. We know Jamal Banks can be a big play guy as well. I think it's just a matter of they need this spring, hammer out the consistency, hammer out the chemistry, start to sort of learn a little bit more about each other, see what sort of steps guys can kind of take. But yeah, I think the talent's there. And then they're going to have an influx of freshman wide receivers as well. Davon Hall is going to be on campus here for the spring. Ja'Cory Barney is going to be on campus for the spring. So they're going to have some options. But yeah, I fully expect the way that what I think Marcus Satterfield and Matt Rule want to do, work off of a play action pass, I think that's going to be there. And with that sort of arm and that kind of threat with the speed on the outside, I continue to say this. I mean, there's a reason that Jalen Lloyd stat always makes me laugh with Marvin Harrison, because if there's only 2 players in the Big Ten that had 3 catches over 55 yards, and one was a freshman and the other is going to be a top 5 pick, and one had like 8 catches and the other had 60-some. I mean, there's a lot of reason to be excited about what Jalen Lloyd could be as a big play threat for 2023, 2024. I don't even know what year we're in.
Yeah, it's all right. You know, this weather just drives us all crazy. It's okay. Now, where it is very nice is down in Hawaii. So I'm going to revisit the Polynesian Bowl here, but talk about coaches on the road, because Rule's down in Hawaii right now, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, perhaps checking out his already committed guys, plus chatting it up with some others not currently linked up to the school, I'd guess. Outside of an event like that, though, what area do you expect this coaching staff to hit the recruiting trail hard this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, they're already again going back into Miami. Cortez Mills is a wide receiver, a top 247 wide receiver, expected to be out for the junior day on. He told me he's getting in on Friday, and when temperatures will be below 0 by the time he arrives. But you know, so they're going to hit Miami again hard. Their connections they have there with Philip Simpson, the sort of Pied Piper effect of Dwight Boodle and Willis McGahee and Ja'Cory Barney. I think they're going to get some of their teammates, some of their friends to come up and check out Nebraska. I think Nebraska is going to have a little bit of a foothold in South Beach. Fully expect Texas again. They're going to have, you know, players coming up from Texas this weekend as well. And then one area that we probably haven't talked a lot about, but I think is going to be really interesting. And they got a guy in Jaden Woods that's coming up. They've had guys like Andrew Babaloa and others. There's connections to Brock Heath, whose brother was Blake Lawrence, who played at Nebraska in the early 2000s or mid 2000s, I guess, if you will, is Kansas City. I mean, there's definitely talent in the Kansas City area, and that is a spot. I mean, I know that you guys haven't been doing this show long, but I promise you, I have been wringing my hands about Nebraska's inability to go into Kansas City since 2014. And a lot of it is they get productive players out of there. I mean, you think about the Davis twins, they were really good players. You think about, Bo Wilson started for Nebraska. They have talent in the Kansas City, Missouri region, and everyone gets really fired up about St. Louis. And apologies, Andrew, outside of you, Nebraska's track record of recruiting from, the St. Louis area and having them stick around for a minute is very difficult. And so I would love to see them have success in that Kansas City, Kansas region. That is an area where I think Nebraska can make some hay, and there's some really good talent in this 2024 class. So if you were asking me, what's a spot that you'd like to see them really improve upon, it's right there. And getting Keelan Smith, I think, was a nice start. I mean, he's going to be a player. He's someone I didn't mention among the wide receivers and early enrollees. I mean, that's a guy, and he's a legacy that we somehow always forget Neil Smith played at Nebraska, despite his outstanding career. That's a guy, too, that could help early on. He was such a good player for Liberty this year. I would love to see Nebraska back in that area with full force.
Schaefer, the St. Louis native and Nebraska great, Chris Brooks would like a word, sir.
Hey, they've got they've got Corey Sims coming in. He's a 4-star wide receiver. He is the son of Corey Sims, the former Nebraska basketball player. Ravi, I don't know if you remember him.
I do.
Or not at all, but he was a defensive stopper on the Barry Collier teams in that time, which, more than Andrew graduating in 2018, Corey Sims having a son that I am covering the recruitment of makes me feel unbelievably old on top of everything else.
Oh, yeah.
I'm happy I come at lesser value.
Without a doubt.
That's where you've always fit in, my friend.
I'm on the clearance rack. It's cool.
just throw a flamethrower over here today.
Hey, that's where I shop.
Schaefer, is there, as we kind of, I think we've basically closed the book on 2024. Is that fair? I mean, you don't expect them to add much other outside of like maybe a backup quarterback in the spring, maybe like we're pretty much done in terms of player additions in 2024, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say the door is completely closed because there's always a chance that there's someone, you find a certain position or someone flashes that people aren't recruiting. And then,
or guys like maybe transferring from Bama or Washington
exactly.
or okay.
And honestly, the example I was going to give is, they did this through the summer last year and they ended up with James Williams as a guy who walked on and then was pretty good for them at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sort of think of it in the sense that while the most notable of it is done, they're always going to be kind of turning the rocks over and looking for ways that they can improve their roster and ways that they can, add talent and develop guys. And so, again, I think that for the most part, it's done and the foundation is set, but they're certainly always going to keep an eye out if there's something intriguing out there.
Schaefer, I wanted to ask you, because I do think they probably need to bring in a quarterback for some depth purposes, but because of their unique situation where we all agree Dylan Rail is the day one starter, it's going to be kind of tricky to convince someone to come here for that backup role. How do you see that playing out? Do they just end up going with Harburg as kind of the primary backup, and then you've got the walk-ons as depth behind there? Or do you think maybe they go the JUCO route? Like, what are their options at that backup quarterback spot?
Yeah, I mean, their options right now are to keep conversations going. I don't think anyone's looking at them as a spot where they can go and start. But you mentioned junior college. I think that's maybe a route that they could go. Like, this isn't going to get anyone fired up, but when I mentioned Adrian Martinez earlier, he had a junior college backup in Andrew Bunch. And so Andrew Bunch was the type of player that if you can find as a walk-on who comes from junior college, has starting experience, at least has an idea of what it's like to play at a collegiate level, even if it's a lower one.
Mm-hmm.
That's better than nothing. Like, I feel like they are more comfortable in that building with Heinrich Harburg as the idea of Dylan Raiola's backup or competing with Dylan Raiola than seemingly anyone else is. And I think they're fine with it. Like, I don't think it's ideal. They would have loved Chubba Purdy to maybe stay so you have more depth in that regard. And then you could use Harburg in special packages or different ways. But I think they're more okay with it than we are on the outside. And then I think they're also going to keep their options open. But I don't think they're looking to use a scholarship to just bring someone in to be the third string quarterback. So if they can find someone as a walk-on or a graduate transfer who's just looking to kind of ride things out, or maybe somebody who wants to get going with a coaching career but has a year of eligibility left. Marcus Satterfield did that with a kid named Zeb Noland, who was at North Dakota State, and then he ended up at South Carolina. There's always options. And I think they'll, again, as I've said before, they'll turn the rocks over. They'll keep the ideas churning. And I wouldn't surprise me if they add someone. It would just surprise me if it's substantial in any measure.
Schaefer, speaking of Harburg, do you think concepts will be drawn up for him to use him similarly to how the Saints used Taysom Hill? Or is it just going to be the Dylan Raiola show through and through? And if Heinrich's needed, say worst case scenario, he's needed, or he moves back to, say, the tight end position?
Yeah, I personally have a vision in my head where that's a guy that you could use around the goal line. I've mentioned this before. Tyrone Swoops for Texas, they had what they call the 18-wheeler package. Mm-hmm. You would bring him in around the goal line, and one, it prevents your freshman quarterback from taking unnecessary hits. Two, but obviously Dylan is not small. Like, that's the other thing. He's his own little wrecking ball. I say little, he's 6'3", 230 pounds. So he's not small either. But I like the idea of maximizing the athleticism of Heinrich Harburg in different ways, different sub packages, and then the other thing is, if teams start to clue in on that and they think it's always going to be a run and you do it from the middle of the field and then he drops back into that option pass, the belly option, I mean, that's going to be there too. So I think there's ways to be creative with him, but you don't want it to come at the expense of the learning opportunities for Dylan Raiola. So they have to figure out how to marry those things together. You don't want it to feel awkward when he comes onto the field. You don't want things to go poorly. So I think they have to be smart about it. But I certainly think they are open to the idea that Heinrich Harburg isn't just the backup quarterback in the same way that Andrew Bunch would have been, or Riker Fife, or Ron Kellogg, or whoever. It's a different type of scenario, and you can use it differently. And I think they're open to that.
Schaefer, we mentioned the spots they've added at wide receiver. Obviously, we've talked about quarterback. They got a big addition in the running back room. On the offensive line, they got an addition in the defensive secondary and in the linebacker room as well. Is there a position on this team that you thought needed addressed that didn't get addressed? Or is there a position that you're kind of looking at as still maybe a little bit iffy on after most of the 2024 additions have come in?
I mean, obviously you'd always want more at wide receiver or running back because it's still so unsettled there. Mm-hmm. But ideally, with what they brought in at this point, I'm just excited for them to get to the spring so we can see what some of these guys are. And you can see what they brought in. I mean, I really feel like they kind of nailed what they set out to do in the transfer portal. They gave themselves 2 wide receiver options. They have a multi-year running back with huge upside. They sort of were gifted an offensive lineman that's going to be able to step in and provide starting experience from the Power 5 to over 21 starts. And in my pea-sized brain, seems like he steps into one of those guard spots right away. It's sort of how Ben Scott did last year, and it helps stabilize the interior of your offensive line. And then the guy that no one ever talks about is Bly Hill, and I'm really excited about him because he was someone they purposely went out and got in a transfer portal run that has 1 million defensive backs. They chose a kid from St. Francis, Pennsylvania, who was a freshman that is relatively not new to football, but still sort of learning, but has one of those freak body types that if it works out, we're talking about Stanley John Baptiste 2.0. Mm-hmm. And while his NFL career did not go how anyone wanted, he was great at taking receivers away in 2013, 2014, I think. that would be the time period. And I mean, I just think he is, if Bly Hill can be that kind of guy, and I thought Tommy Hill came on strong at the end of the year, suddenly you have two pretty good safeties, drop in the guy that everyone forgets about in Deshaun Singleton. I think that secondary could be pretty good right off the bat. And then the Stephon Thompson addition just feels like a cherry on top. I mean, it was a position where you needed help, and it's a guy that can absolutely play for you there in the middle.
That's all we've got for you today, Schaefer. We appreciate your time. As always, really good stuff. And, I hope for better things for you in your professional football fandom next year as we, at least the NFC North. I mean, I know you're probably rooting for the Packers to
see how it feels to be of lesser value, Schaefer.
Here's the thing. Real quickly, I looked at Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield in the second round of the playoffs. I feel like anything seems possible in the
There you go. Next year could be your year. That's our guy, Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7. Coming up next, we got some Hurrdat Hot Seat here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. We're also live on Twitter, on Facebook, and, of course, on YouTube, where our commenters are popping off as always. Before we get started here on our Hurrdat Hot Seat, I want to tell you about our friends at Pratt Dental, located in North Platte, Nebraska. Pratt Dental was the first dentist in Nebraska to be certified in the BioClear method and modern smile design, which can correct many aesthetic dilemmas in a permanent and less invasive manner than traditional treatments such as crowns. You can get more done in less time. Multiple restorations in the same day means less time, less waiting. It's less invasive and fewer appointments. You can check all this out at prattdental.com. That's PRATT dental.com/BioClear-dental-treatment, or just go to prattdental.com, click on services, and it'll take you to the BioClear method right there. Or you can give them a call, 308-221-2800. That's Pratt Dental, creating healthy smiles. Hopefully we'll create some healthy smiles with our version of Hurrdat Hot Seat here today. Andrew, would you like to go first? You want me to go first?
I'll start off.
All right.
And it comes on the heels of watching Bills fans skip out on work to go shovel snow in the stadium. And I got to tell you, there is not a day in my life that I would choose to skip out on any job that was inside to go shovel snow for hours outside.
Absolutely not.
Even if it's a job I'm highly disliked. And I've had jobs like that before.
But inside versus all that crap?
Yeah, no, thank you.
Hard pass.
So my question to you is, what is the wildest thing you've done to skip out on work for?
Ooh, I don't know that I've done any.
Could be a school thing too, if that helps.
Yeah, I don't know that I've done anything too crazy. I wasn't really much for like cutting school or anything like that. And I'm kind of the same way with work. I don't miss a ton of work. Usually it's I got a doctor's appointment or whatever. I'm trying to think. Do you have one? I'm trying to think.
So I have a couple. The first one, my school example is probably my best example. In college, I think I've told this story briefly before.
Yeah.
My brother worked with the St. Louis Sports Commission, and the SEC tournament was taking place in St. Louis for basketball. And I skipped an entire day of classes to sit at Enterprise Center and watch nonstop basketball in a suite.
That's pretty good. I mean,
it was great. And now, granted, like, I didn't really tell any of my teachers what I was doing, but I made sure it was not on like a test day.
Sure. Yeah.
So, I got around, I beat the system that way. As for work, and I'm not like super proud of it.
Okay.
But when I had a job at the radio station back in St. Louis, I was in college still.
Okay.
I was on the women's practice squad. Okay. And they were just returning on their bus from winning the conference tournament, first conference tournament in program history.
Yeah.
I didn't want to miss it, but I had to work the night shift.
Okay.
So, and I'm not the first person to do this. So for those listening in St. Louis, don't get mad, because a lot of board ops at least that I know, have done something similar before. When there's nothing going on, like no sporting event, no nothing to physically hit buttons for and stop for commercials, it's an automation the entire night.
Yeah.
You just have to sit there and make sure that it doesn't ever like mess
Screw
up
yeah.
or go into manual for whatever reason. But if it's in automation, it's just going to keep
going. It should
going.
stay. Yeah.
So I left so say their bus was returning at 8. I had the 6 to midnight shift. I left at like 7:30 and I just didn't go back. And they came home and then it was like, hey, let's party. We won the conference tournament.
Sure.
Dude, the amount of stress I held though that night, like I was constantly on the stream.
I was saying, did you keep like checking in to make sure it was
making sure that it was still working. I still had a job the next day.
That's good. That's good.
But yes, that was probably the wildest thing I've done, because the amount of stress somebody takes on for an experience like that definitely wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
But I'm happy I was there for the women too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I haven't really done anything crazy. The only thing I've done, and this is I regularly do, is I will take off work for the first 2 days of the NCAA basketball tournament. Like I'm just sitting, I'm watching basketball.
Can't really do that anymore.
The games don't start yet, so we're okay by the time we're off the air. But I watch basketball for 12 hours a day. Love it. It's my favorite couple days of the year, that opening weekend of the NCAA tournament. And so it's not really crazy. Like I have PTO, so I mark it off back in like January, and then I just don't go to work for those couple days so I can watch basketball. Right. But yeah, I don't do anything crazy usually.
Okay.
That
doesn't shock me. You seem very buttoned up.
I try to be.
I live a little bit more on the wild side.
living dangerously out there. Okay, so I want to ask you, as a Bears fan, okay? This is my hot seat question.
Okay.
What do you do with that number one pick? Because we've talked about it a little bit. I know you've been thinking about it a lot. You've got Justin Fields. Do you trade him to like Atlanta? Do you use the number one pick? If you do you go on Caleb Williams? We were talking to Jason Cole yesterday. He said he didn't want anything to do with Caleb Williams. Where you're the GM of the Bears, what's the move? You've got 1 and 9.
Well, I saw somebody tweet this out yesterday, and I kind of vibed with it, kind of didn't. They said they compared the number one pick that the Bears have this year to a gift card, because it was essentially gifted to them.
Absolutely, yeah.
From last year. So why not just take a flyer on your gift card? But at the same time, I'm like, well, you have to realize what you can get with that gift card, because yes, you could make that impulse buy and just do it because, you think you need a new TV, but you already have a TV. But you could get a Fire Stick, a PS5, other things to pair with this TV to make it even better. So those are the things I kind of think about. If I had to make the pick today, I'd probably pick Caleb Williams and trade Justin Fields.
Okay.
So I know you can get a lot for the number one pick, and I know you're kind of hitting the reset button with Caleb Williams, but as a prospect, we haven't seen a lot of Caleb Williams before.
Sure.
And so what he brings on paper is pretty attractive.
It is.
That's not saying that the experience from Fields isn't attractive either, and that I think that he was misused in Chicago for a majority of his career. But you also have to think about how Justin Fields is as a football player and how long he can actually last taking the hits, using his legs.
Kind of the Cam Newton problem, right?
I just don't know how much longer he has in the league. And so if you don't buy into Caleb Williams now and you buy into Fields, that may help you immediately. But is that the best for long-term success, where you could trade Fields, get the 8th pick from the Falcons, just say. Now you have 8 and 9 as well. Well, you are guaranteed to get one of the top 3 receivers in the draft, because the top 3 guys are not going within the window of 2 and 8.
You probably
2 and 7.
You probably, if you're dealing 8 and 9, you probably can still get a quarterback and a wide receiver at 8 and 9.
And I'm with you as well. So But I also think that's a good position to get a tackle when you need a tackle, or maybe a defensive piece. You're not going to get another Caleb Williams after pick number 1. Michael Penix, I think, could be a really good quarterback in the NFL.
Penix,
and I love the way he carries himself, and I love the way he does business. So
you could be looking at a Jaden
too.
Daniels.
But if you trade Fields, I like what the door opens up for. Let me say this one more time. I like Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields will be a good quarterback for the Bears next season, maybe the season after, if they get a guy like Greg Roman in there that really knows how to use Fields to the best of his ability. I just don't know how long he will last in the NFL because of his skill set.
So here's the question you have to answer if you're the Bears, right? If you're their GM, because it's actually, I think, riskier to keep Justin Fields in terms of keeping your job, right? Because you're betting on a guy that if he's not good next year, if he's not what you think he can be, you're fired, right? If you draft Caleb Williams and you trade Justin Fields, then you get a couple years to be like, we gotta build around him. We got to get the right coaches in here for Caleb Williams. You get all of these extras to build up around Caleb Williams. If you keep Justin Fields, you're saying, hey, I think we can be good or a potential playoff team next year, which they could be, because the NFC North isn't scaring anybody right now. But it's ironic that the short term, what's best for the franchise is the riskier move in the long term for the GM, which is why I think they will end up taking a quarterback, likely Caleb Williams, with that number 1 pick. Coming up next, we've got more Hurrdat Hot Seat here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up the show here on a Tuesday on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. Shane Schillerberg producing for us. We're jumping right back in to the Hurrdat hot seat. We just went through what if we were the Bears GM? What do we do with that number one pick? What do we do with Justin Fields? I think we both landed on drafting Caleb Williams and trading Justin Fields. It opens up a lot of possibilities, and the ceiling on Caleb Williams is just so high. It's hard to resist that. But your next question in Hurrdat hot seat, sir.
So, we talked about emotion to open the show. We spoke a little bit about Jason Kelsey and moments like that in sports. I kind of wanted to ask you, is there a video series as you're scrolling on your iPhone that just makes you the most happy? Like, you're just scrolling on social media and you're like, if you put all of these videos in a series, like, this makes you the most happy. I'll go first to give you some time to think.
Yeah.
My favorite videos, the ones that I just absolutely love, are the You're on Scholarship videos.
Oh, those are good. Yeah.
Like,
those are good.
If those were pooled into a series for me, I would scroll for days just watching that. Another one off sports, military homecomings. Like, those videos to me are just like, they warm the heart. Is there a video series for you that is just, my goodness, this makes me happy?
Sure. Yeah. Probably unsurprising to people. Mine is pet related. There's these videos of people basically at like rescues when they tell a dog they've been adopted.
Oh, I love those videos.
And then their tails just start wagging. They start smiling. It's just like, oh, yeah, you've been adopted. You're going home. And the dogs just get so happy, and they show them like walking out to meet their family, and their like butts are wiggling and like shaking their whole body. So I probably go with the you've been adopted videos.
And that's the best thing about a dog too. I feel so bad for those that are allergic to dogs.
Oh yeah.
Because like, a dog doesn't care who you are, what you look like, what your story is.
They're the
like,
best.
They are there to love you, and that is their sole goal in life. And that is why dogs are they're the best things on earth.
Oh, they're incredible. Yeah.
What about a sports one though?
Sports one, the scholarship ones are good.
What about like draft day calls?
Draft day calls are okay. I probably couldn't watch a bunch of those. The you've been put on scholarship ones are really solid.
I started to get into the MLB Hall of Famer calls now.
Oh, so okay, that's a good one. So the you know how the NFL does their Hall of Fame? They have that like giant dude. I don't know his name. The giant. He's like, he's an enormous human being, and he like walks on to, like, the one that really sticks out to me is there's one where he walks on the set and tells Jimmy Johnson that he's being a Hall of Famer. He walks in and tells like Joe Thomas at his house that he's being a Hall of Famer. I think Zach Thomas was a really emotional one too. I could watch those quite a bit, where they're the giant behemoth of a man that goes and tells people that they made the NFL Hall of Fame. Those are pretty good.
You know, the other video series that I'm low-key really into is O's when he goes to NFL meeting rooms. O's Perlman, the guy that does like mind reading and magic, where he like, messes with the players. Like, those videos I could sit for days.
There's
and
like
watch.
the David Blaine does card tricks in front of like NBA players and stuff is really funny to watch, because they're all just like, what the? I also. Oh gosh, I just lost it.
Can I give you one real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, Shane.
I like, and it always makes me happy. I always like the pump up videos, like the Raiders send out, like game day pump up videos.
Oh, like the game day hype videos.
Game day hype videos, and the reason why, especially with the Raiders, is because chances are they probably lost last week, but they made a hell of a video, and they made it look like they didn't lose at all.
That's a good.
It
one.
makes me feel
we
good.
Always love the supermodels on social media. Heath on YouTube says college basketball coaches dancing in the locker room.
Ooh, those are
good.
good.
Win.
Those are good.
Specifically Cinderella teams in the tournament.
Absolutely. That's a fair one as well. All right, I'm gonna go non-sports on this next question here for you. There is let's see. Let's go with, this is a weird one. All right, you ready?
I'm all for weird.
How much money would you have to be paid?
$6.
That's not enough for the question I'm about to ask.
$7.
All right, I'm holding you to that. Wait till the end of the question. How much money would you have to be paid to use sandpaper instead of toilet paper for a year?
Oh, man, $6.
Now, you can pick the sandpaper. It can be the smoothest sandpaper you can find, but it has to be sandpaper.
I may just not wipe for a full year.
You can't buy a bidet. That is not part of that is not part of the equation.
Golly.
Because you're gonna be in pain for a whole year.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming I'm gonna put this caveat because Shane always throws this in there. He's like, well, what if I get like an infection or do I have to go to the hospital? No long-term health effects. You are just
other than extreme chafing.
It just hurts for a year. Your butt hurts for an entire year.
Can you use the back of the sandpaper?
No, absolutely not.
Can you use like A&D cream to help? Like
you can use whatever you want to help soothe your sandpaper bottom. But
you got to pay me a lot of money.
I was going to say, what's the number?
I would need.
It's got to be pretty high, right?
I would need $100,000 a day.
A day?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So what is that?
36 million? Is that right?
$36 million.
Is my math right there?
$500,000.
100,000 times 365. Yeah, 36.5 million.
Yeah, I would need 36.5 million. I would need $100,000 a day because even if I don't go, I'm still feeling pain on the days I don't go.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's why I get $100,000 a day.
That's fair. My number is actually pretty close. When you said $100,000 a day, it sounds really like, but my number, I was thinking like 50 million. Like it, because I mean, you are in a lot of pain for an entire year. Like it's gotta be, this is probably like my full-time job now is just like taking care of my chafed bottom from the sandpaper. I think you're right. I think it's got to be north of like 25 million minimum.
And I got to tell you, man, they're not all clean breaks. And sometimes you get the danglers and it's just, it's not okay. You're going to need the sandpaper at some point in time.
It's not all clean breaks. I do think you have, it's got to be a high number. I thought you were, so when you said 100,000, I thought you were just going to say $100,000. And I was like, dude, you're nuts.
Yeah,
There's no way I would do it for $100,000. Yeah. We have to be talking about tens of millions of dollars to consider it because that's going to be a bad year.
But I got to tell you, $36.5 million sounds pretty awesome.
That'll get it done. Yeah,
that sounds pretty awesome.
I think that'll get it done. You have another one?
Yeah, I got one more. We'll fit her in here.
All right.
You know, I was thinking about this yesterday because when we were talking about my trip to V Mertz, I feel like I got to separate V Mertz. I put them too close together, and people are probably like VEEMERTZ. Is that where he's going? We were talking about the guy that is their wine connoisseur there.
Yeah.
What is the job called?
Sommelier.
A sommelier.
Yeah.
Like the pirate?
No, that's Somali.
Oh,
sommelier.
Sommelier.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm like, you know, how awesome would it be to be an expert in like something so unique? What is something you wish you could be an expert in the matter of like a unique category in life?
Yeah. So pretty easy for me. I would definitely be an expert in like black holes. I find black holes fascinating. Like,
would you use sandpaper?
No. I really love the movie Interstellar. Even before that, though, I've been obsessed.
Interstellar is a great movie.
I've been obsessed with black holes, and you know, if you're kind of like I'm, you know, kind of an amateur, physicist enthusiast, black holes are kind of the like potential key to possibly like time travel and things like that, and like between that and like wormholes, and so you're like, I'd probably be either black holes or because you know we've talked about my Chernobyl obsession, maybe like nuclear fission.
Yeah, apparently I need to be an expert in those categories.
I would say you just got to watch the miniseries; you'll be all caught up.
I'm trying to think because I would love to be a brewmaster.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know, like how is that like really unique? A brewmaster.
I mean, it's a job that people have. I think it's reasonably unique.
It's not as unique as a sommelier, though.
No, probably not. Not especially the master sommeliers. Like that's a really high level of.
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to be a brew master. I think that'd be a really cool job.
Have you ever done like a home brew kit?
No.
Okay.
And
you should start there. Before you change career path.
I know it's a lot of work. Gosh, I know people that are brewmasters, and that job is such a grind. Like, I don't know.
It's
not like it is a skill, but it's also like more of a. It's hard labor.
Oh yeah, it's a combination of both skill and hard labor.
And I don't know how much hard labor it takes to be a sommelier to carry a bottle of wine.
I think
you
less.
really just have to be smart.
I think less. Yeah, it's more about your palate, less about the. It's less of a blue collar job as a sommelier.
If I could be an expert in one,
dude,
if I could know, like every. Okay, like it's sports trivia, but like a certain thing in sports trivia. Okay. So like if I knew every Heisman Trophy winner and finalists, like in all time, like if there was something in sports trivia, that I could be an expert in, that's what I would want.
Really?
Yeah. I know it's weird.
That's super niche.
But like I'm looking for like the most niche thing I can get. And that like World Series winners all time, but I know every playoff team.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. I used to be able to do the World Series winners back to like 1932, but I can't anymore. Yeah, that's a really – so you've got random sports trivia. I've got black holes.
Maybe I just do all sports trivia.
That is that's the program for today. We'll be back tomorrow with
TK said expert football better.
Ooh, that's
my man.
That's for you. More Hurrdat Sports Radio tomorrow.